This is the Fiscal Court meeting for November the 19th, 2021. We welcome all of you. Thank you for being here for this part of the court meeting. This is our work session. And before we get started, I'm going to announce, unfortunately, Squire Booth is not feeling well this morning, and we send our thoughts and prayers to her for speedy recovery. She will not be with us, so we'll be missing one of our squires, but our thoughts go out to her. The next item on the agenda is authorization for approval of minutes from our regular meeting of October the 28th, 2021. Any discussion on the minutes? All right, we'll move to the next one. The next one is authorization for approval of the county clerk's claim for preparing tax bills. And Jeff Hancock is on. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And there's actually two items. We'll let you go on and do the sheriff's official receipt for property tax as well, if you want to do that.
Well, I can do it however you want to do it. The bills have already been sent. If you're a taxpayer and you have property, you already know they're in your mailbox at this point, and they're due. So this is kind of a technicality. This is a bill that you split with the state, and you pay half of it and the state pays half of it. I pay the remainder of now, but they've already been billed, and we've actually already paid for it. So any questions?
Yeah, I got a question. What I didn't get one of my bills, and I've heard that from some other people too.
Okay.
One of your bills?
Yeah, that means somebody else paid it?
Unfortunately not. I want to remind everybody with the tax bill, they are a friendly reminder. They are not statute. They wanted to quit sending out the ones that remind you of your cars. But the clerks threw a fit and said, man, we're going to have people delinquent all the time. This is not a good taxpayer service. So to Franklin County, if you did not get a bill, it does not mean that you are exempt for the year. It does not mean that we are not sending you one. It does not mean that Judge Wells paid it for you. It means that we need to get a hold of you. You can start by calling the PBA and make sure it went to the right address. If it's something that has happened for the first time, but you've gotten them several years in the past, my guess is that the Postal Service just hadn't got it there to you yet. But they are due, and they still follow the same statute and guidelines.
I thought maybe it's just they afraid I'd die from sticker shock or something. But I guess I know it's out there somewhere.
Yeah, you still have to pay it, Squire Moore. All right, Jeff, and so we've sent out the tax bills. Jeff, you can kind of reiterate what I'm going to say is that there are 7 entities on your tax bill. And even if you're in the city, you get a separate tax bill. And those 7 entities are the state, the county, the school, whether it be Franklin County schools or the city. Are the city schools on the city tax bill, Jeff, or on the county tax bill?
They're on the city tax bill, Judge.
Okay. The county extension office, library, the health department, and the conservation district. So there's 7 entities. The county is just one of those entities. The county last year took a reduced rate. So if you did not get a reassessment, your county portion of the 7 would be should be a little bit less than it was the year before. So we're happy for that. We're happy when we can always cut taxes, and we're doing our best to try to do that as opposed to raise them, because we understand. But we move forward just to make sure that everybody understands there are 7 items on there. The county is one of the 7. And the largest of them, if you look at it, and yet is a sticker shock, is the schools. It's by far the largest entity of the 7. And with that being said, that's a overview of the tax bills. And Jeff, thank you for getting them out. Thank you, Sheriff, for collecting them. And we still have a few weeks to go. The end of November, isn't it, Jeff? That when the rebate.
Yeah, the discount point. The discount point.
2%. Yeah, right. Okay, so everybody get out, pay your tax bills if you can, as soon as you can, and if you can't, make sure you do pay them as soon as possible, so you don't get an extra expense on them. All right. Anything else to say, Jeff?
No, sir. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. All right. Let's move to the next item on the agenda. And the next item is the second reading and approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 31, officials and organizations, sections 0.01 firefighter qualifications of the Franklin County Code of Ordinances, amending the hiring and fitness requirements for firefighters. Chief Brewer, I see you on. You want to explain that?
Yes, if you're called during the first meeting, I believe Squire Muller had a question on changing the age from 21 to 18, how that could affect our insurance. So the chief and deputy judge Harrod both reached out. They said that there would be no effect to our premiums. They would still be required to go through the same training as anyone else and prove that they're capable of driving the truck before they would be allowed to do so.
Okay. Any other questions on this ordinance? Squire Sebastian.
Thank you, Judge. Just one quick question for I think Chief Hutchinson's on as well, and he or Assistant Chief Brewer could respond to this probably. By proposing a reduction to the age of 18, when would be the earliest age for full retirement if someone was hired in at 18?
That would be the new retirement system. And maybe Betty Jo could answer that.
Okay. Who may?
Betty Jo, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm on.
Okay, Betty, do you know about the Tier 3 program for fire personnel? What the retirement would look like?
Currently right now, one of the is they are no longer, they can't use their sick time for retirement for any service credit. Okay. And I believe it's 27 years before that they can retire instead of 25. And they're also in the hybrid cash balance plan, which is like a 401k plan. It's totally different from Tier 1 and Tier 2.
Okay.
That's the three main changes that they made, and they're pretty critical, in my opinion, for the hazardous positions.
So they do to get full retirement, they have to go 27 years, right?
I believe it's 27, correct? Did that
Okay.
answer your question?
Yes, I just wanted to verify that, and so you know that to be the case. 27 years for full retirement.
Yes, for hazardous. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Now, the 27 years is not age plus number of years, Betty. It's just a solid 27 years then?
Yes, the full 27 to get full retirement. Yes.
Okay, so the non-hazardous is a little bit different, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything, only thing's different of the non-hazardous is actually there's no difference. I'm sorry.
There isn't. Okay.
Nope.
All right. Any other questions? No one else? All right. Next item, authorization to approve a resolution in support of submission of an application for grant funds with the United States Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Emergency Management Agency's 2022 Assistance to Firefighters Grant. Chief Brewer or Chief Hutchinson? Chief Brewer?
Yes, thank you, Judge. Just to kind of give you a brief summary, we've requested for the SCBA in the past. One reason we decided to go back with it again this year is they've done some changing to the notice of funding for this grant. They've made this type of equipment a high priority as far as replacement. And then they've also increased the funding. So we thought that as big a purchase as this is, we thought it would be worth giving it one more shot to try to secure this grant for new SCBA.
Okay. Any questions on the grant application? Okay, Squire Muller, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Judge. Just curious, It's a 10% match if we do receive the grant. Is that something that's in the fire budget, or is that something the court will have to come up with?
Yeah, it is a 10% match. That is not something that's budgeted in the fire department budget due to the unknown circumstances of grants and whether or not you're going to receive them. That's not included in our budget.
Okay, thank you.
When would that come about? Is it going to take several months? So it would be in this year's budget or a new budget?
I believe the grant announcements usually come out in the spring, and then you have 2 years. With the delays you're seeing with receiving items, it's possibly something, if the timing worked out, that we could figure into next year's budget.
Okay.
Because I think you have 2 years to complete your, if awarded, you have 2 years to complete your project.
Okay. That's great. Okay. So it wouldn't affect this year's budget anyway.
No, I believe it's something, Ann could clarify if I'm misspeaking, but I believe it's something that we could come about in the spring if we're awarded budget for it, and then complete it in next year's budget.
Annie, you want to
Yes.
speak to that before I get to Squire Sebastian?
Yes,
Annie?
that would be correct. But by passing the resolution, the court does agree to provide that 10% match.
But it could be in next year's budget.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Squire Sebastian?
Thank you again, Judge, and I apologize. Can I ask one more question about an item in tab 5? I just saw I had a note when I flipped the page over. I apologize. And it has to do with the fiscal ability test. Are those fiscal ability test requirements applicable based on age ranges? Or if you, let's say you start with the fire department at 18, do you have the same fiscal ability requirements to meet at age 42? I'm just tossing out numbers. I'm no specific thing. I just want to make sure I understand that, because that's a newly highlighted item under item 4B4.
The CPAT is a standardized test that was approved. It's basically giving you a pass-fail rate. So it's not age specific. It's either you can complete the task in the allotted time or you can't.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right. Somebody else have any questions on this one? All right. Don't see any questions on this one. The next one is the second reading and approval of an ordinance amending the operation of the County Fiscal Court, Chapter 30, Administrative Code Purchases and Contracts, Section .120, Small Purchase Procedures for the Franklin County Code of Ordinances by setting a fixed minimum bid amount. We were asked to look at that. Our attorney has looked at it. There's a lot of discussion last meeting on about 3 different rounds of some want 30, some would compromise at 25, and some want 20. So Rick, I'll turn to you and let you speak.
Good morning, Court. As you know, this issue's been addressed a few times, and a couple meetings ago, the court directed me to prepare an amendment to the code section to lock it in with an amount certain. I was instructed at 20,000, which I did, and that is the change that you can see by striking through the benchmark that ties it to the state amount, $20,000. That was what the court directed me to do. So the matter before the courts, the $20,000 that y'all told me to change.
As I said last time, there was talk about 30, which is equal to the state. Tamara, did you include something in the packet about the state procurement?
Yes, sir.
All right, you've got what the state does. And so anybody want to speak about where you are, or why you are where you are? Squire Moore?
I'm and there's at least one where I have to bid it, and I have to put in some fluff in there because for unforeseen circumstances, and it usually time-wise and bid-wise, it costs them a couple of thousand or more every time. And one of the other cities do the same job for them, and it saves them probably $2,000 to $4,000 every year. So that's just my.
Okay, that's good 10 cents worth.
And, you know, with inflation being what it is, $20,000 won't buy much for us. So I would like to see it at 30, at the same as the state, whatever it is.
That it moves with the state, based on the state.
Take that in consideration at 10%. I'm going to throw out 22. So let's see if we can find a happy medium, and I'm going to, like I said, throw out 22.
All right. So we've got a option for 22. Anybody else? Squire Blackburn.
Yes, Judge. I can go with the 10% increase to 22.
Okay. Anybody else? Would you want to put any type of, and I don't know what the verbiage would be, but would you want to think about some kind of verbiage that it could go up with as inflation goes up, or is it going to just stick here for another 10 or 15 years? We moved it up 10% for inflation, but then if inflation in 2 years is way past the 10%. So I don't know. I'm just throwing that out.
Well, being it's in the administrative code, we revisit that every June. So I say we just revisit it every year. I think inflation right now is a mystery and a scary one at best. So I'm good with just leaving it like that, and we revisit it every June.
Okay. Anybody else? Squire Sebastian?
Thank you, Judge. I think the squires have made a point in regard to, making a increase for inflation. I can be at 22. I was one who was pretty reticent on 20. I feel pretty reticent about it today, but I do understand the inflation discussion. So I can be at 22. Thank you.
Okay. Squire Muller, you want to say anything?
Thank you, Judge. Yeah, I was at 25, but obviously I'd be sitting there by myself, and we'll be going round and round again. So I'm fine with the 22, Judge.
I like the 25, Squire Muller.
Then that's just going to be 2 of us and 3 of them. And I mean, we got to vote on this. I mean, something's going to have to go.
Yep.
Well, folks, let me intervene. Now you get to the meat of the matter. If you're changing that, remember the problem was a perceived inconsistency with the other section that had it at 20, and then this one was benchmarked to the 30. That is the state one. The instruction originally was to make it consistent across the board. If you're going to go to 22, then I get to go back to the drawing board and address both matters at 22 to make them consistent, so this issue does not continue to raise its chimeric-like head. If that is the case and it's the consensus of the body at 22, then I'd ask you to defer a vote on this one as a first reading, or even consider just allowing me to go back to the drawing board, so to speak, and make it consistent across the board at 22. That was not the original direction that I got from the court. That it was to make it consistent at 20. And I don't want any inconsistencies if it could be avoided. If you're going to go to 22, don't vote on this one. Let me go and back. We'll do 2 more readings, get to the same place, but I'll have it settled across the board at all sections. This was to cure an aberration in one section.
Okay. Squire
Judge,
Moore?
I would go with the 25.
I can go with 25. So Rick, if there's three at 22 and three at 25, we're in a stalemate, so we don't do anything. Seal?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've had too much coffee from watching the eclipse this morning, trying to stay awake. If that's the case, I'd like the court to consider then doing nothing today. Let me go back on all the sections and I'll put a blank on them and y'all can debate it to make them consistent. That was the issue, was a perceived inconsistency. Interpretation wise, there was never an inconsistency, but I understand the problem with a benchmark. The court was very firm that you wanted 20, or I understood the court was very firm, 20 across the board, and wanted that out of the way. So that's the only matter that's been addressed. I wasn't given instructions for a lot of leeway, but if you're going to do that with the different ones and deviate from those two, then that's going to require a little bit of editing more, which would not be appropriate because it's going to be another section that gets addressed. So just bank this one for the next one for first reading. Go ahead and deny it or just let it die.
We'll
And
just
then let
let
me
it
bring
die.
it back on you. And then I'll put both sections in there at a blank at this point, and then you can cover the 22, 25, 5, whatever it might be. But that's a whole different, that's a different characterization than was originally presented, which was just a modification of one section. I'd rather prefer that you consider a consistency across all of them, which is a little bit more nuanced than what was originally proposed.
All right, so we'll take that off the agenda. Okay, and not vote on that and bring it back at our next meeting. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it.
Thank you all very
Thanks
much. Thank you for your consideration.
Yeah, thank you for your good work. Okay, that moves us to the next item. And that item is the second reading approval of an ordinance amending the table of special ordinances, Section 1 zoning map changes of the Franklin County Code of Ordinances for a 53.5 acre property identified as PVA. I won't go into that yet. Identified as a PVA on the PVA map and is located on Manley Leestown Road from RR to IG. Robert Hewitt, you're going to be on, and you're going to be on for a little while. So welcome, Robert, and we'll let you start with this one.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Court. So this zone map amendment request, as you stated, is 53.5 acres of property located on Manley Leestown Road. It does not have a current address. That's why we reference it by the PVA map number. The requested map amendment is to go from its current rural residential zoning to industrial general. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on August the 12th, 2021, in which they took testimony and evidence into the record. They tabled the item to have a summary prepared of the evidence and the findings, and then conducted a continuation meeting on September the 15th, 2021, in which they deliberated and established the two findings of fact located on page 1 of your ordinance. Those were adopted from the staff report and located in section 1 of the ordinance. The Planning Commission did recommend approval with two conditions. The first one is that if approved by the Fiscal Court, the development plan for the property come back before the Planning Commission for their consideration. And then secondly, that a certificate of land use restriction be provided to the commission for their review and consideration as well. This did pass unanimously by the commission. Now, Mr. Jones represents the applicant in this case, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And of course, I'm sure Mr. Jones is as well. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Jones. Thank you for being on. We do have a question from Squire Blackburn.
Yes, thank you, Judge. Robert, in looking at the abstract, it says going from rural residential to industrial general. But on the application, it says the present zoning of the property is agricultural and the proposed zoning is IG. So can you help me out on that?
Sure, bear with me. Let me move my map out there.
You want Mr. Jones to explain, comment on that, Robert?
No, sir, give me just 1 second.
Okay.
It's after page 12 in our packet.
Yes, that you're correct. The ordinance does state the rural residential when it's actually agriculture. So I would request that this first reading that the clerk allow and the court allow the amendment and the preamble and other areas within the ordinance to modify it from rural residential to agriculture. So that's my mistake.
Not, okay, so you're going to, we'll have to make sure we're all clear on this, Robert. Go back. So this is a second reading and approval of an ordinance amending the table of special ordinances. And I'm gonna read this, and so you need to make sure that we get this correct, Robert. Section 1 zoning map changes of the Franklin County Code of Ordinances for a 53.5 acre property identified as PVA map number 060-00-00-024.01, located on Manley Leestown Road, from rural residential district RR to industrial general district IG. Are you saying that is incorrect?
Yes.
So what should it be?
Located on Manley Leestown Road from agricultural district AG. So
To
strike,
industrial general,
yes, sir.
from AG to IG.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything that could cause consternation by us doing that here in the second reading? I'll yield to county attorney on this one.
I'm looking at it here, Judge, and Robert, correct me if I'm wrong. The map amendment as described in the ordinance, is that a typo or what is what's the substantive effect of that change?
Bear with me one second.
Because it is on for second reading.
So this, the summary prepared and submitted to the planning commission correctly states, as well as the legal advertisement, agricultural district to industrial general district. So this is just a typo on the ordinance.
And the ordinance itself on Manley Leestown, let me look at that particular section.
All documents within the planning commission and staff file correctly reference agricultural district to industrial general district. The only discrepancy was the typo on the preamble of the ordinance and in section 1 of the ordinance.
That's correct.
Well, okay, that's what I'm looking at right here. The rural residential to industrial, that is incorrect.
Correct.
And then again, it reflects, but the ordinance as read reflects residential to industrial general. What exactly should it say?
Agricultural, strike rural residential district RR and insert agricultural district AG.
So the proposed change though is to modify it to industrial
Yes, sir.
under both circumstances, no matter how you cut it.
Correct.
Okay. I don't think that's that significant because all the other documents, I'm looking at those as well in the packet, and I think you all got it. Correctly reflect what the current zoning is, but the proposed change under all circumstances is to IG, correct? Correct, Robert? Mr. Hewitt, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
The court can proceed.
All right. That's what we needed to hear. Okay.
Judge Wells, the corrected ordinance has been sent to the clerk.
It has, so
Yes, sir.
send those out to the magistrates then. And make sure that's on the final draft, I guess, when we
It
sign.
will, and the second reading of the ordinance, if approved, will also note the change.
Okay. All right. Mr. Jones, are you on, or you do you have something to say? Are you
No.
aware of what we're talking about?
Yes, yes. I mean, I concur with Mr. Hewitt. It was presented for the planning and zoning correctly, presented, advertised correctly. It was just on this one document. So I'd have nothing further to add.
Okay. Squire Tracy?
Thanks, Judge. I got a question for Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, just to circle back to a question that was asked once before, the Manley Leestown Road access point will not be used as a point or as access to bring bulk inventory loads into the property, correct?
Yes, as was testified to at the planning and zoning hearing in the transcript, it was not to be used as a major point or really to be used at all. And we have since submitted a development plan that is compliance with what we stated at the planning and zoning hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions? All right, Mr. Jones, thank you. Thank you
Thanks,
for
sir.
being on. Glad that we got all that clarified and cleared up. Robert, let's go to the next item. The next item is the first reading of an ordinance amending the Franklin County Code of Ordinances, sections 155.010. There's a lot of them in here, and I'm not going to go through all of them. But this is highly unusual, Robert, to have this many changes. So I'd like for you to explain this, what this ordinance is or amending and why, please, sir. And we do have some people on, Mr. Harp and Dr. Mark and Melissa Deaton. Thank you all for being on, and if need be, we'll ask you all questions as part of this process. Mr. Hewitt.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Judge. So this text amendment was originated from the applicants. They are represented by counsel this morning, Joshua Harp. Their intent is to open up a recovery center for individuals. I believe it's related to drug addiction in a house-like setting. The reason this text amendment was presented is because I was unable to identify this activity in the county's current land use table. So the applicants and their counsel prepared documents related to their specific activity. This was presented to the zoning update committee, and ultimately, upon their discussion, did recommend that it be forwarded to the planning commission for their consideration. The applicants had requested, as you mentioned, Judge Wells, that this be an activity in many of the zoning districts. It would only exclude the high-density multifamily districts, the general commercial and highway commercial district. Otherwise, it's being proposed as a conditional use in all other zones, from agricultural all the way to industrial general. So it's specific to a residential recovery center as opposed to a medical type facility. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on August the 12th, 2021. They adopted findings of fact and made a recommendation of approval to the Fiscal Court by a vote of 6-1. I'm happy to answer any questions, but of course, with the applicant and their counsel present, I think they could provide much more detail about the activity than I could. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, we've got some squires that want to answer questions. Squire Moore, you're first.
Yes, to me, this would be akin to one that's going on in my district that's not the same, but it's close. And when you put these things out in the residential areas, it creates a problem because it's too far for emergency services to get to them if something happens. And too many neighbors to contend with if something goes awry. I don't like something like this out in, there's too many zones here. I think it needs to be narrowed down to a zone change where it comes before us instead of planning commission just putting a facility out into the general public and people not really having any say so about it. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Squire Tracy.
Thank you, Judge. Robert, just quick question. Would the public, if this activity were to pass, or this ordinance were to pass, would the public ever have an opportunity to voice their support and or opposition in regards to an activity like this being done in their neighborhood or so forth? Or is this a staff, or would this be a staff made decision?
As a conditional use, it requires consideration by the Board of Zoning Adjustments. Those public meetings are noticed in the newspaper 2 weeks prior to the public meeting, and adjacent property owners are notified by my office from first-class mail letter identifying them as an adjacent owner and a description of the request. So in short, yes, there's an opportunity for public input on the conditional use permit request.
Okay, thank you.
Robert, could we ask the Deatons to give a brief summary of what their facility would be like? Because Squire Morris brought up some legitimate concerns, and so I'm asking you, is it legal for us to let them speak and give us an overview? Or,
Yes, sir.
or Attorney Harp?
Yes, sir. I think that's very appropriate.
Okay, so Dr. Deatons, I'll let you have the floor if you'd like, or you all could yield to Counselor Harp if you want. But either way, give us a brief overview of what you foresee. What does the facility look like on an everyday use? So we, the people, the residents around you would know what this is about.
Thank you, Judge. I'll say just a few brief statements and then I'll yield to Attorney Hart to clean it up, if you will. The residential facility, the importance behind a residential facility in that type of area is to try to get the patients away from the inner city area and hopefully away from the increased trafficking and availability of drugs and crime. I think that's pretty understandable that the closer you get to the city, the more increased and available that stuff is. And we wanted an area where we can work with the patients in a more quiet setting, a more land, more wooded area, if that was available, if we found that. So that we could do things to increase life skills, not just the regular clinical stuff, which would be included, but things where they could actually have some hands-on, like gardening, small animals, stuff in nature, which has all been researched and evidence-based, that anything like that you can add to the treatment of addiction recovery increases the patient's chance of maintaining recovery from that. And at that, I will yield to Attorney Hart.
Thank you, sir. Attorney, let me ask this question. What type of supervision, and I fully understand in the outdoor, doing outdoor activities, but that even brings up some more concerns that residents might have. What type of supervision would be required for this, Counselor Hart? Be part of this.
Thank you, Judge Wells. If you will permit me, that would be a question that I would actually defer back to Dr. Mark and Melissa Deaton. For purposes of the zoning ordinance itself, I think that different programs will differ pretty widely in the model that they use, which is one of the reasons why we believe that it's appropriate to allow this as a conditional use in the number of zones that we've proposed. But and I can speak to that in a moment, but with regard to the Deaton's intended specific model, which I believe is a subset of what we're proposing the amendment include, I would defer to them as to what they envision as the amount of supervision that they would incorporate into their residential recovery program.
Okay, so we'll let them speak to that then. Is that okay?
The regulations that are in place that govern this type of program and this type of facility require that there be a 24-hour availability staff. And depending on the number of patients, X number of one staff member per X number of patients. So there would be, at a minimum of any facility like this, there would be between 2 and 4 staff members, depending on the size of the patient population at the facility, a minimum of 2 to 4 staff members, 24 hours available, supervising.
In addition to like what the regulations, because we have other regulations we have to adhere to based on licensure in the facility, we also will have increased security technology wise. Like so we'll have cameras in place. We'll have the place locked down at certain hours to where we would get alerts, and the staff that's on site would get alerts if windows were opened, if doors were opened. And so we just feel like for safety of community, but also safety of our clients, that's important. We'll also have those in place. Yeah, I think that's mostly the.
But you are saying there's 24-hour direct supervision, at least you said 2 supervisors?
Depending on the size of it, the regulations permit that the minimum size for any facility like this would be between 12 and 16 patients, depending on where it's placed. And that requires from the regulations 2 to 4 staff members available around the clock at all times. And of course, if the facility is in a place where that size is increased, then the number of staff members has to be increased. It's a ratio.
And it does require, like, we have 15-minute bed checks. So like every 15 minutes, eyes will be on patients. In the evenings, it's bed checks. In the daytime, it's just clinical checks of, there will be eyes on every patient every 15 minutes.
Squire Mahler.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, everybody, for being here. First, I want to thank you for helping people with addiction problems. Question for the Deatons. I noticed you're from Georgetown. So do you currently have a facility in Georgetown?
Not this kind of facility. We actually just live in Georgetown. We're opening up an outpatient facility there. There is a residential facility already located there. We have an outpatient center here now where we provide outpatient services for people after they've come out of the residential that we're kind of proposing here. But we also look at other mental health and help families and children and those kind of things as well in our current practice.
Okay, thank you. Just curious, why wouldn't you open this facility in Georgetown? Why Frankfurt over Georgetown, if I might ask?
There has not been a residential treatment facility in Franklin County since, I believe it was 2010, and that's when Beta, which was a residential facility in a rural area, that's when Beta was closed down. Beta was under the umbrella of bluegrass.org, and it was a funding issue. Beta and another one of their smaller facilities shut down at that time, but had been in practice for a number of years and had a high success rate. Since then, there hasn't been a facility for residential treatment of any type of addiction in Franklin County. And I have worked in Franklin County since on and off, and now permanently since 2008, and have been firsthand witness of the struggles with this issue. And per my thinking and several others that I've been acquainted with and have been cohorts with and associates with, high need for this. And Scott County, Fayette County, they have residential facilities, and we focused on an area that has none.
Okay, thank you. Judge, if you don't mind, could I ask Robert a question, please?
Sure.
Hey, Robert, when the Deatons presented, they were talking to, it sounded more like a farm style facility. Is there and I know I was listening to Squire Moore's, comments about what's going on in his district. Are we looking at a acreage minimum or anything like that for what they're looking to build here?
Nothing other than what's currently contained within the zoning regulations.
Okay. So if I could go back to the Deatons, are you all thinking like I'm just trying to get this in my head, so I apologize if I'm being repetitive, but so are you looking at like a subdivision style thing, or are you looking more of a farm? Because you mentioned animals and gardening and things like that.
For our purposes, and I do want to be like aware of that our purposes are very specific for our vision. And I think the way this is proposed, and we agree with the way it's proposed, because our vision is different than what some other one's vision may be. And there's evidence for other types of facilities to work. And so just keeping that aware before, like, as I answer your question, we are looking, and we don't have an acreage minimum in mind as, we think about places, but we are looking for something that is more farm-based because of really just our vision and belief of the way being in nature affects really trauma responses that often come with the history behind people who struggle with addictions. And there's a lot of research that we have really been exposed to that shows the benefits of working in nature and being in nature and working with animals and the response systems that it has on our neural pathways and whatnot. So for our vision, yes, it does have more of those aspects to it.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Deatons, I'm using that as plural, so either one of you can answer. Recidivism among outpatients and residential. What are you seeing? Why are you saying that residential evidently is better than outpatient?
The primary struggle has been for, I'm going to say a decade, but especially in the last 5 years with the increase in fentanyl and carfentanil, the primary struggle in the substance use community has been the use of opiates and opioids, heroin, fentanyl, pain medication like Lortab, Percocet, Vicodin. The overdose rate is based primarily, and by primarily, I mean over 85, 90%. The overdose rate, when we hear about an increase in overdose rate, is referring to overdoses primarily caused by opiates and opioids of that nature. In Franklin County, it increased in 2020 from 17 overdose deaths to 25 overdose deaths. Of those that were fentanyl related, it increased from 6 to 20. The average opiate user that goes into residential treatment will go into a residential treatment facility 7 or 8 times before they maintain recovery. Without residential treatment, the likelihood of that being a possibility and the number of opiate users that actually get clean and stay clean decreases dramatically. The longer you can have them in a residential treatment facility, the better your chances are. Having them in a facility where it's 24-hour supervised and they have clinical programming and recreational activities throughout the day, 7 days a week, the quicker that, basically the quicker the fog lifts, because they're able to interact with the facility staff. They're able to interact with their counselors on a daily basis if need be, definitely once a week, but on a daily basis if need be. They're able to interact with groups on a daily basis, definitely. They're able to interact with 12-step programming and people that have been in recovery for several years that they would be involved with. It's being involved on a daily basis with someone recovering from addiction. You are able to watch their struggles and make a determination on what they need. In an outpatient facility, which has per research always been a step down from residential, in an outpatient facility at best, you have them 3 to 5 times a week, because it is a step down from residential. And again, the success rates of addiction or recovering from addiction, there's a dramatic decrease between residential and outpatient. 80%, 80 to 85% of opiate users relapse after they leave residential treatment for the first time.
Okay, thank you for that explanation, that alarming stats. Robert, is there a way that we could look at this ordinance and bring it back for a second reading and say that we are concerned about this type of facility being in a residential area, and that if this were to be approved, it would be under the contingencies that it would be in certain zones that would allow, it'd have to be so many acres. I'm going to throw this out. This is a starting point. So at least 10 acres. And so they would have to be on a certain size of property. And would there be other zones that would work in? But to put them in virtually carte blanche in any of these zones has got to be concerned. It's concerning to me, and I know it's concerning to residents to have these facilities. And there's not anything against the Deatons and what they're doing. I applaud you for what you're doing. But we, as the fiscal court, have to look at what would we want? Would we be okay with this next to our house? If you can answer that question, yeah, we'd be fine with it, then that's so be it. But I think there was going to be a lot of concern for people throughout this community to have this type of facility as a next door to their house or two doors down. So I'm asking you, Robert, to think and talk with us about restrictions that would require more acreage and be out of the residential and I know some of it, the multifamily is exempted, but there's still, you could still be in a residential area with neighbors on both sides of you with this, the way it's written up here, Robert.
As for amending the ordinance at first reading, I will defer that to Councilor Sparks.
And I guess what I need to hear, I'm one voice. If the other magistrates are concerned about this, that's fine. But I am concerned. I'm trying to speak for residents, and so I do want people. Pardon me?
You know I am.
Yeah. I see some hands now have Mr. Harp, would you like to go first, and then I'll go to and they maybe want to ask you a question.
Certainly. Thank you, Judge. I believe that I can speak to those concerns. Excuse me. And in order to do so, if I may, let's back up just a moment and talk about why we need the zoning amendment in the first place. The need for this amendment became apparent when the Deatons approached planning and zoning about this general idea, about the general idea of having a facility in a residential location. And they were told by planning and zoning that essentially there was no place for that in the zoning ordinance. They were told, and I believe Mr. Hewitt will confirm, that in the past there have been a couple of similar models, similar homes that have been permitted or conditionally permitted under the category of charitable indigent limited care facility, which is a definition, a designation that appears in the zoning ordinance. However, that doesn't work. It doesn't work for a couple of reasons. It doesn't work because it applies by its definition only to what it defines as recognized local charitable organizations. And that's fairly non-specific as to what is in fact a recognized local charitable organization. It also goes so far as to say that in these charitable indigent limited care facilities, that no full-time living quarters are to be provided for either indigents or staff in that facility. So that alone knocks out any type of residential use in that context. And finally, by the definition of that term itself, it's limited to facilities that provide primarily care to people who are indigent. Well, I believe that it is without question, without the ability to seriously debate, that substance abuse affects people from across all family histories, backgrounds, walks of life, and financial statuses. And so a facility that would be a residential recovery facility would be welcoming all of those people, regardless of their indigent status. We want to help people who have suffered from alcohol and drug and other substance abuse, not just people who are poor, right? That's not the focus of a residential recovery facility. So trying to shoehorn a residential recovery facility into the designation charitable indigent limited care facility is at best dishonest. It's just not accurate. It's not what we're doing. So when we talked with planning and zoning about this problem, about the fact that there simply is no place under the zoning ordinance in Franklin County for any residential recovery facility at all, we said, how do we fix it? And we were uncomfortable with trying to fix it by sliding under and trying to pretend that the facility was something that was close, but not quite what we were talking about. We think that what is the appropriate remedy is to fix the zoning ordinance. If we're ever going to have the ability in Franklin County for people to seek residential help for substance abuse, the zoning ordinance needs to be changed. So then that begs the question of how do we change it? How broadly do we change it? As you've just heard the Deatons, they have a very specific model in mind with regard to a rural setting, a farm setting where they may have plants that are growing, they may even have animals, and they have there would be the need for there to be some level of land to support their model, some acreage. I don't know what that arbitrary number would be, but of course, their model requires there be enough land to support their use. However, we believe that the right approach to fixing the zoning ordinance in Franklin County is in fact a big tent approach. In other words, as Melissa Deaton said a few moments ago, they recognize that even though they have a very specific model in mind, there are other models for fighting substance abuse that are equally valid and may vary differently and vary greatly. So we have drafted our proposed amendment in such a way that it would also include programs that look very different. That might include literally 2 or 3 or 4 individuals living in a home, which would be fine. There would be nothing wrong with 2 people or 3 people or 4 people living in a home in a residential location, as long as they were not members of a program of some sort. In other words, if these people left the program and rented a house together, that would be fine. And there would be nothing in the ordinance really that would prevent that. However, if they live in that very same house, but are a part of this program and the program owns that house, well, under our current zoning ordinance, that's a problem. So what we have done and what we did when proposing the number of zones to which this would apply was we looked at the zones that allow some type of what you might either consider residential locations where there are homes where people reside, where people bed, And so we propose that wherever people bed, as a matter of course, with I think maybe one or two exceptions, including we didn't propose this to be in mobile home zones. So I don't think that would really be fitting for a few purposes that I don't think we need to get into. But anywhere that people are allowed to bed, whether as a permitted use or conditional use, that was our starting point, because we can envision that while the deeds model may be one specific model, there are many other models that may be very different and that would be equally valid and equally appropriate, but wouldn't use the same mechanisms or the same land usage. But this is also why we propose this not as a permitted use, but as a conditional use in all zones. In other words, we have not proposed that this be a permitted use in any zone, but that in all of the zones that we have proposed, we've asked for it to be a conditional use. That means that at minimum, any applicant who wants to use a piece of property in Franklin County for a residential recovery program would need to apply for a conditional use permit. And as Mr. Hewitt indicated, that would trigger notice to the surrounding communities, public notice, a public hearing before the Board of Adjustment. And the Board of Adjustment then is really the entity that is best positioned to do the kinds of things that the court has been doing here today. And that is to say, well, what kind of facility are we talking about here? What type of, is there going to be adequate supervision in this particular setting? We believe that the Board of Adjustment can ask those questions on a case-by-case basis and decide whether a proposed use is going to be a good idea or a bad idea based upon the specific proposed parameters of whatever that program might be. And so because it requires a public notice, public hearing, and then the Board of Adjustment can also apply certain conditions to that permit and say, okay, we are concerned about screening, we're concerned about access, we're concerned about some infrastructure issue. We will only grant the conditional use permit if you do these certain things, which might include a whole litany of things that the Board of Adjustment might believe is appropriate and necessary for a proposed use to be permitted as a conditional use in a particular location. So I hope that demystifies a little bit as to why we have proposed a pretty broad range of zones, because these are zones in which either with maybe one exception, but there are zones in which people are allowed to sleep. And that's the focus of a residential recovery facility, is to provide them a place to sleep, a place to live, and to be there as a program and support during that time. Be happy to answer any other questions that I can, but I hope I've provided a little bit of context for the need and our thinking as to why the number of zones is appropriate.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Councilor Harp. Squire Muller.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Mr. Harp. I think that made a whole lot of sense. I appreciate you explaining that. Judge, if I could ask Robert a question, please. Robert, just thinking, do we know what the ordinances are written like in, let's say, Woodford County, Scott County, the surrounding counties? Are their ordinances similar to ours as far as recovery houses?
I do not know.
Okay, thank you.
Robert, let's go back to let me make sure that this is very clear as I ask this question. I like the idea of conditional use, but there is a limit to what conditional use does, in my mind. So Robert, I'm going to ask you, there will be a lot of concerns, and let's make this very clear. Dr. Deaton's, we respect, I do personally, I respect what you're trying to do. What I'm trying to do also, though, is find a balance between what you're asking for and what the residents of our community can live with. I'm concerned that the conditional part, even though it's great and has to be in there, is limited in what it can do in the respect of trying to prevent the fears of the residents. Robert, can you kind of give us a summation of what the Board of Zoning Adjustments might ask and expect to have that would come out of a conditional use in a residential area?
So the Board of Zoning Adjustments has the authority not only to impose the general conditions contained within the zoning regulations, but also to impose any additional conditions they deem appropriate to address any concerns they may have or any concerns from testimony relating to safety of the occupants of the facility or adjacent property owners or the community at large. It's really an open book for the commission or the Board of Zoning Adjustments based on each individual application. Because as site locations vary, conditions vary. So, the board, has flexibility, they can, and if an applicant disagrees with a condition or conditions placed by the board, they have the right to appeal that to the court system and have that heard. So really, Judge, the Board of Zoning Adjustments has a lot of discretion on this, on a conditional use, any conditional use. I hope that answers your question.
Well, I mean, it's still pretty broad, but
well,
Squire Blackburn.
Yeah, thank you, Judge. Yeah, this is a pretty big deal. I do commend the Deatons for what they're wanting to do, and I think the approach of coming at it in a broad stroke is the right idea. But at the same time, we approve this today. Being a conditional use, it will go in front of the Board of Zoning Adjustments, I guess at each occurrence and at each location or wherever, and they'll set the parameters, but it will not come back to us on that basis. I think, the Fiscal Court is a more direct representative of the people, and not to say anything negatively about the Planning and Zoning Commission. They do a wonderful job. They're a bunch of fine people, a bunch of very well-educated people. But at the same time, they don't, they're not directly accountable to the public like we are. So I'm concerned that we'll have some conditional uses that the public, I know they're notified in advance. I know they get letters, but there are some fears. There's some unknowns. There's some things that they will probably need explained to them before this happens next door to their house or their warehouse. I know we've got industrial, commercial, general industrial. There's a few districts in there that seem iffy to me, but I understand the process. I understand the need. I had a close family member really benefit from a facility like we're talking about. But I do have some concerns, and I want to make sure that the public totally understands it. I think Mr. Harp, you did an excellent job of explaining why and the need, but at the same time, I feel like the last line is the planning and zoning, and that's it. And once it goes past this stage with us, that's what we've got. So I trust them, but I do have some concerns.
Squire, thank you, Squire Blackman. Squire Tracy.
Thank you, Judge. Just a couple questions. Would the health department have to inspect and approve these facilities?
Robert?
Not to my understanding.
They would or wouldn't? I'm sorry.
Would not.
They would not. Okay. Next question would be, if needed, who would be responsible for enforcing the stipulations that could be handed down by the Board of Zoning Adjustments? If they handed down stipulations, who would be responsible for making sure that happened?
That would be my department, planning and building codes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Deaton, you held your hand up. You wanted to respond to the health department?
Yes, sir. We have, since it is a 24-hour facility and they would be residing and sleeping there, we have to offer food services. So there would be food handlers there and there would be meals provided. So the health department does have to come in and inspect regularly, whatever their schedule is. We do have to pass those inspections.
Okay. Squire Sebastian?
Judge, just a question in regard to how individuals would be referred to this facility. Would that come through like the Justice Cabinet? If that is the case, does funding, I guess, trail with that? And then specific conditions and reports that have to be made? Just trying to figure out kind of along the line of the questioning that Squire Tracy shared in regard to inspections and who may be coming in the facility to, as you've indicated, there will be technology there that kind of monitors things. But when there's reporting required, there are additional monitors for that may give neighbors some additional level of comfort, but also may not, because as Squire Moore had indicated, he had gotten calls from his district in regard to a facility that is currently there. I've also gotten calls in regard to the facility in Squire Moore's district. So I have a heightened sense of that based on concerns of the neighbors there. So just trying to understand who would have access to the facility and how it would be monitored outside of the individuals who open the facility. You know, if it's Justice, you indicated the health department, there could be others that may have that responsibility. That may also be helpful to the court. Thank you very much.
So as far as where the referrals come from, they would come currently to our outpatient facility. They come from several sources, and they would, for the inpatient facility, come from several sources. We get them from drug court, we get them from DCBS, personal referrals, hospitals, detox centers. But there is a screening process, and we, per the regulations in our screening process, we are allowed to turn away anyone that does not meet our criteria. Currently, and this would apply to the inpatient as well, currently, we do not take any violent offenders. We do not take any sexual predators. We do not take anyone with a mental health diagnosis that would require medication for them to be stabilized until they have been on medication and stabilized. And that's a pretty standard screening process in most residential facilities. Now, when we get into it, we may make it stricter than that, but just off the top of my head, I know that that's what we do now, and that's what is standard in other areas.
Robert, since this is the first reading and we don't vote on this particular item at this time, and we bring it back for a second reading, is there a way to look at the different zones and come back if we, and I'm just saying this is not a we, this is Judge Wells' statement, that if we put a restriction on these facilities that they must have at least 10 acres or 5 acres or whatever. Is there a way to that could fit in some of these, continually fit into some of these zones and be amenable to not hindering getting this type of facility, but being more restrictive on where it would go in the community?
I'm happy to work with the court and the applicant to further explore the concerns that have been discussed today. However, amending the ordinance, I will defer that question to Councilor Sparks.
I'd draw the court's attention to what would be the proposed modification there, section 155.085. It's highlighted in the ordinance recitation, and it contains a number of zones, AG, RR, et cetera, that this conditional use would be permitted for further consideration. And under the existing structure, that consideration would be through planning and zoning. The court does not have direct oversight of conditional use under the scheme in place. But to address broader policy issues, and I think certainly the court could elect, in the infinite judgment of the body politic, to parse out certain zones as currently stated. For example, well, I won't get any examples because it's all comprehensive. That conditional use as described is highlighted in page 2 of your ordinance. That sets out the various zones under which that condition could be considered. And if the court only elected to do some of them, that's one way of addressing it, but that's not how it came up from planning and zoning.
But we could do it though, right? We could say there would be a restriction for so many acres if you're going to put to use it, right?
I see no reason why you could not evaluate that, but that would put you going through. There has been no discussion of the discrete zones as to the applicability as to a given one, for example, residential, as opposed to what is it? General industrial.
Yeah.
You know, you could put it, or pardon me, the conditional use could put it in an industrial zone. The planning and zoning didn't parse out the discussion as to discrete zones. And if I'm mistaken, Mr. Hewitt, Mr. Hart, correct me, but the multiple zones addressed are all set forth there. And again, as council indicated, I think the intent was, and this is something, y'all, let's just remind you of this. You get caught in the weeds on this really fast. I know it's a NIMBY problem. We all know it's a not in my backyard problem. Just recognize what it is. We're sending folks from Deaton and Deaton to other communities in their backyards every day. I see this, and I'm going to preach for a second. Our drug problem in this county is huge, and we need facilities like this. I mean, in wherever, however you can do it, because our citizens are dying, and people are more than happy to build more jails and more prisons to put them in, but they won't spend a damn dime to put them in a facility where they can get treatment. I say all the time, as soon as treatment becomes more profitable than incarceration, you'll see treatment. Right now, it doesn't appear that it is yet. But take a look at this hard and the broad parameter. In the broad sense of it, and at least what you're doing is proper, try to structure it to take a look at those things, because their community needs facility. Maybe not this one, don't know, wouldn't got in the middle of that. Facilities like this. Because I'm promising you, when they say you want to put more space up at the jail so you can incarcerate people, it would go down with vast applause. Treatment works, and we need treatment facilities. Delineate those sections across the board. Find a facility or find an area that you think is more appropriate. Maybe you think it should just be industrial. You got limitations, et cetera, with the residential factor of it. But take a hard look at it, and you can parse out sections, but you're going to have to identify those sections. And that's going to be something Mr. Hewitt's going to have to describe to the court, whether or not it's appropriate in discrete zoning areas. And good luck with your decision.
So Robert, if you looked at where they're in residential zones and you had a restriction on acreage, but you didn't have a restriction on acreage where they're not residential zones, i.e. industrial general. Can that be looked at in a way too, also?
Yes, sir. In testimony at the Planning Commission, as well as in the discussion today, the applicants have mentioned the possibility of having, their clients, garden and work with animals. So as it relates to that, there is a minimum acreage for livestock and garden crops. In the rural residential zoning, it requires a minimum of 5 acres as indicated in the noted special conditions of the zoning ordinance. The minimum acreage for an individual lot in the rural residential district is 1.5 acres. The minimum lot size for an agricultural property is 5. Bear in mind, though, there are some non-conforming lot sizes in the county. So, any newly created lot would require to be platted to those minimum acreages. And as it relates to industrial possibilities, while if it were to be an inpatient, facility where they stay, it's not likely to be constructed in the form of a dwelling. It'd probably be more of a commercial or industrial type facility. So, when you're considering different zones, there are certain limitations on activities. For instance, you could not have livestock and garden farms in the industrial zone. Okay, it would basically just be the facility. Agricultural and rural residential would allow for garden crops and livestock. So that sort of sums it up. So no animals, no livestock in the single family or low density multifamily districts or in the commercial or professional office districts.
So Robert, I can see this has been a difficult task for you as well to kind of comprehend, hadn't it?
Yes, sir, it has, because there are 2 different residential care facilities. One's established in KRS and another one is established in Article 15 of our zoning regulations. And as Councilor Hart mentioned, I struggled with it. I didn't know what to call this. Our regulations don't identify. I agree with Councilor Sparks. This is much needed. The jails are becoming the treatment centers, and that there's an issue with that. When Councilor Sparks identified the NIMBY issue, the not in my backyard, that's exactly how this would be perceived when it goes, if it goes before the Board of Zoning Adjustments under a conditional use permit. So perhaps a larger lot requirement, along with some other stipulations, could be beneficial to those in proximity to facilities such as this. So I'm happy to work with the court to brainstorm ideas, and because I've worked with the Board of Zoning Adjustments, my entire tenure, and I do understand how how they will look at things. I can anticipate questions that they would have. So yes, Judge, there is a possibility to modify the request to help provide some assurances, if you will.
I think that's wonderful. And to the Deaton's eye, there's no question that we think that what you're doing would be helpful. And so I hope that you can understand that what we're trying to do is find a compromise, because if the last thing you want is a group of residents pounding on your door and protesting in front of your facility. We don't need that. So I like where the court's going, Robert. I like what you just said. I think that's a great compromise to try to work this out, to get a facility in Franklin County that could help our needy people that with this addiction. So there's one more question I see. Squire Tracy, go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. A couple questions. Robert, if there were criterias that were put on this in regards to acreage size, would that limit their ability to open up residential housing in other areas of the county? Ultimately, let's say 5 acres or more. I know that allows them to quote unquote work with animals and so forth, but would that would pretty much push them outside of the city limits, correct? If they were to agree to 5 acres or more.
Generally speaking, you are correct. And a condition such as that could be listed in the zoning ordinance under the as this being its own subcategory within the conditional use permit section of the zoning regulation, much like as a bed and breakfast and things of that nature, where there are additional conditions in addition to the standard conditional uses that staff has to consider. So it can add another layer. So you are correct.
Okay. So it would just push them out. Okay. And then next question. Obviously, we've had a couple days to look at this and all have great questions. And I don't think anybody has spoke out against the need for treatment facilities. How long have you and your department and the Deatons and Mr. Hall, how long have you all been working on this?
Mr. Harp, at least 6 months, wouldn't you say?
That sounds about right.
Okay, so please forgive me. Like I said, we just received this. So, Robert, would it be too much to ask to go back to one of the other Squire's questions? Would it be too much to ask to get some of the surrounding counties ordinances in regards to what they allow, what they don't allow, just to help us in regards to see what other communities are doing? And then my next question is for Dr. Deaton. You made reference that currently that the housing does not take violent offenders or sex offenders or people that have to be medicated. In regards to currently, is that something that you could see changing in the future, or is that something that you are that you stand adamantly against?
I just meant currently as in our outpatient facility right now, since the inpatient is not available. As far as, I don't want to say never, but I do have to say that we have to look out for the safety of our staff and our clientele. So I can say adamantly that there will always be a rule in place, whether they fall under one of those categories that I mentioned or not, that any client that threatens the safety and well-being of staff or other clientele will never be allowed in either the outpatient or the inpatient facility. And we've, over the history that we've been involved in this field, whenever we had the call on it, before we had our own facility, and now with our outpatient facility, we've turned down several for that very reason, because they didn't pass the screening process.
Okay, thank you.
Judge, if I could address the question from Squire Tracy.
Sure.
Squire Tracy, I'd be more than happy to reach out to as many communities as I can to attempt to locate their regulations and provide that documentation to the court for consideration, in the event that the court is inclined to make amendments to what's being presented. I would also like to follow up, Squire Tracy, with your question to Dr. Deaton as it relates to medications, and just so in preparation for any amendment, Dr. Deaton, would your prohibition of being medicated include individuals being treated for depression, anxiety, PTSD, or other mental issues?
Can I answer that?
Yeah. Well,
so our prohibition for the medication, that's just until they're stabilized. They need, and it's really more for the extreme psychiatric type medications, like if they're hallucinating, if they're hearing voices, like that has to be under control before you can really treat addiction. As far as depression and anxiety, that just goes with addiction. It increases with addiction and substance use, what's already there, and sometimes causes it, and it's not always medicated. Our goal would be to teach them how to handle and cope with their stress and anxiety, because often that's, as you treat the substance, the anxiety and depression goes away, medications aren't needed. And so it's really a stability factor for the patient. It's a little different than the violence and the sexual predators that would be there. We're very adamant of keeping our staff and our community safe. And so that falls under there. Once someone is stable on good psychiatric meds and the hallucinations and delusions are at bay, they would then be eligible for our facility. And they would continue, we would be sure that they continue with their psychiatric care with their current stabilizing forces.
And if I can add to that real quick, I'm glad you asked that question so that we could elaborate. Coming into the inpatient facility, one of our regulations is that any medication required for mental disorders or physical disorders, any ailments going on, any medication that is required for that must come in a prescription bottle with proof of the prescription for the patient. Anything that is over the counter must come in a brand new container, unopened, and medication management is part of the inpatient process. So once stabilized, then our staff manages and makes sure that they take their medication regularly every day while they are in our program.
Let's see, Squire Moore, you go first, and then Squire Muller.
Yes, someone asked about the health department inspecting such a facility. I have concerns about if it's out in the rural setting and is not on a sewer system. It would take a massive septic system to accommodate such a facility. And the one I'm referring to in my district does not have either of those. And it's been a problem for the neighbors and for the facility. And once it's established, there's really not much you can do about it. So is there any, I'm assuming the health department would have to inspect the septic system or whatever. So it's just, I guess that's a question to somebody.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And so I'm going to kind of help Robert with the question. Robert, so, and maybe the Deatons might know this as well. Is there a restriction on the number of people you could have in a home based on a regular home's septic system? So if you think back to what the Deatons have said, there's a possibility of 14 to 16 people staying in one home. If you had a 5-bedroom home and you had 2 people in each bedroom, you could have maybe up to 20. Now, I don't know whether that's the case or not. You all mentioned 14 to 16. So is there something you would know that right offhand, maybe Robert or the Deatons, about the septic system and what would be allowed? Robert, I'll go you first.
All right, thank you. Septic systems are sized based on the number of bedrooms and anticipated occupants of a dwelling, if you will. So the only way that the health department would have any role in the system is if I were to notify them of a potential change of use from a single family dwelling to an inpatient facility. then, if that were in as one of the conditions that the health department be notified and I request a facility review by them, then that would ensure capacity of the system, and also could indicate that site would not be appropriate for that activity. So that can be a condition placed on this, whether it be by Board of Zoning Adjustments or by the county regulations.
Can we make that a county regulation, that be part of conditional use?
Yes, sir, you sure could.
All right, let's look at that as we move forward. Squire Muller?
Thank you, Judge. Again, I want to thank Dr. Deaton and Mrs. Deaton for wanting to do this for our community. I think to Rick Sparks, Council Sparks' point, I mean, this is a huge epidemic in our community, in every community, and I think every one of us has been touched. If I could ask them, maybe, I think a lot of the hesitation is we just don't know what these facilities, kind of look like per se. If it'd be possible, maybe for you or your attorney to share with us the facilities that are in Scott County and maybe in Fayette County, because you mentioned those, as far as what they look like, so we could have a little bit better understanding what we're talking about. And, I just want to say, I think because this is a problem with our whole community, I don't know if it's fair that we just send them out to the rural parts of town. I don't know if that's fair to those people. So I think we just need to look at this as a community, city, county together, and figure this out. It's obviously not an easy thing to talk about. We've been talking about it for an hour, and I think we still have a lot of questions before we get to where we need to be. So if I could request that from them, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, I think we did that at the beginning. I asked Counselor and both of them to kind of go over, but we'll do it again. You all want to kind of review and tell us what a residential facility might look like?
But Judge, I was just wondering if there's like websites out there that show the ones that are already in existence, or pictures, or how they function. I think we get the idea of how they function. It's just visually, the ones that are in Scott County or in Fayette County, what do they look like? What kind of settings are they in? Are they in subdivisions? Are they on a farm? Is that information that could be provided?
Yes, you can look. I think most, if not all, have a website. There is Recovery Works, which is in Georgetown. There is Isaiah House, which is in, I believe, both Woodford County and Fayette County. Isaiah House took over the facility, the residential facility that used to be the Nile in Woodford County. There are larger facilities in Fayette County that include the Hope Center for Men, the Hope Center for Women. Now, please keep in mind, all of these have their own approach with a little variation on that from facility to facility. Some of them are state set up facilities and fall under certain different regulations. Some of them have parts that fall under the same thing that we're talking about, and there are regulations as far as the amount of square footage that we have to have per client, depending on the client, number of bathrooms, number of space in the bedrooms, and what's available. All that stuff is limited by regulation, but those facilities are some examples you can look up on the website. Some of them look like a regular house. Some of them look like a hospital. Some of them look like part house, part hospital. The different shapes and sizes, but yes, if you type those names in, most of them have a website with pictures and explanations of what they do.
Okay, and I appreciate that. But if you or your attorney can maybe just send an email to the fiscal court so we all have the same information as far as the actual facilities, I think that would be helpful.
Counselor Harp, Tamara Harrod is going to send you a link to her website, that you could send it to her and then she'll get it out if you would. Certainly. And if the court would permit me, I believe I can succinctly address a couple of the things that have kind of been bantered about over the last 20 minutes. If the court would permit me to say just a few more things. Yes, we're going to try to wrap this up as quickly as possible and move on, but sure.
I'll be as concise as I can, but I do believe what I have to say will be helpful. First of all, as to the question as to whether facilities look different, how these facilities look, what do they look like? The answer is they look very different from facility to facility. A big part of what I do in my practice is represent a number of nonprofit organizations. Some of those nonprofit organizations have what would be classified under this ordinance as a residential recovery facility. Some of those are in homes that they have purchased. Some of those are facilities that have been constructed specifically for the purpose of having a residential recovery facility, and so maybe look more like a dorm facility. Dr. Deaton mentioned the Nile and the Isaiah House taking that over. I'm familiar with that program. I was involved in representing the Nile when Isaiah House acquired the Nile. And so the Nile was a residential facility with a home that had been lightly modified to allow ladies to live there in the home while they were part of this program. I also think that highlights the question as to whether acreage is a good idea. I can provide an easy anecdote. One of my clients in another county has recently had a donor offer to deed them a home, a house. We will give you this house, no strings attached. And the intended purpose of that home is to use it as what is more or less a graduate house. So people that are still associated with the recovery program, and they still have an umbrella under the program, they're under the umbrella of the program, but they have already been in the program for an entire year. And now they're in the phase where they are not really, they're not being supervised as closely every day. They have jobs, they have cars, they have liberties, but they're still in sort of that safe place in a home. It's a house in a neighborhood. And I believe that our current ordinance at least brings into question whether that would be allowed. And there is a substantial question as to whether that would be appropriate. That's why, say, requiring a minimum of 2 acres, I don't think is appropriate in, at least not in all zones, because I think that would prevent uses like the one I just mentioned, using an existing house in a neighborhood for purposes of a graduate house or someone who is been in the program for some period of time. All of that to say, these programs and residential recovery facilities look very different. I will also point out, as has kind of been observed, this is something that we've been working on for a number of months. This is not something that we have sort of come up with overnight. We don't believe that we're going off half-cocked or without having wrestled with and thought about exactly the kinds of things that the court and the members of the court have brought up today. To the question as to septic, I think that I'm speaking a little bit out of my expertise here, but I believe you'll find that the septic requirements would be a part of the building code enforcement. If a facility is going to have a certain number of people in that facility, it may require septic, it may require a wastewater treatment facility, it may require different things depending on the number of people who are actually going to be at that location. And I believe that falls under building code. And finally, I just want to point out that while I too have no objection, of course, to seeing what other people and what other counties are doing, I am the first to say if someone else is doing something right in this context, then by all means, let us cheat off of their paper. However, I will point out that I would caution the court against relying too heavily on that as some type of a Polaris or a guidepost, for the simple reason that just because they're doing something doesn't mean they're doing it right. For instance, if they were to look at their surrounding counties and look and see what Franklin County is doing, they would find that we are doing exactly nothing. And so we may find the exact same thing with regard to our surrounding counties, that they too are not handling this problem very well. And so I would just simply caution the court against relying too heavily on what other counties around us may be doing. Thank you, Judge.
Councilor Harp, we appreciate your comments, and you actually kind of solidified where we're going to go, how we're going to move with this. You've been working on this for 6 months, and you all, and you've brought it to us. We've been working on it for an hour and a half. And so I'm asking Robert to come back to us at our next meeting and have some different ideas and different zones that this would work in different ways. The Dr. Deaton's have asked that we not put it on a voting session until our December the 17th meeting. So our December 2nd meeting will not be a voting session, but it will be a continued discussion and an update from Robert Hewitt on what he has come up with with the different zones. So with that being said, that's how we're going to move forward. We still have on schedule to have it voted on the 17th of December. Thank the doctors for being here. Thank you, Counselor, for your update. And I hope you can we appreciate where you're coming from. I hope you can appreciate where we're coming from, because we all are looking to try to get something done in a way that we can find a compromise that everybody can be satisfied. So with Squire Moore, I'll let you go, but we're going to need to move on. Go ahead, Squire.
Just a question. When does our time up on this? It looks like their meeting was August 12th. Is it 90 days from that?
Robert?
The 90 days is only specific to zone map amendments.
Yeah, okay.
Not text amendments.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Okay, so we got that. Thank you all. And now we're going to move on our agenda. Thank you all very much. Okay, the next item. Okay, take a little breath. All right, the next item on our agenda is authorization to approve a resolution accepting Wellington Lane into the Franklin County system. Mr. Hewitt.
Thank you. So, let's hope. Yeah, the Wellington Lane is within the Wellington subdivision located on South Benson Road in the 5th Magisterial District. This residential subdivision has been platted in 3 different phases. However, the Wellington Lane right-of-way was created in phase number 2 in 2006. It is 0.31 miles in length, or 1,633 feet long. The original developer only constructed the base grade and asphalt and some ditch work. The current developer, who I believe is on the line with us today, has done extensive work to the road system, and based on inspection by both the road superintendent and county engineer, and at the request of the current developer, I am recommending that Wellington Lane be brought into the county road system for maintenance. I'm happy to answer any questions the court has.
Okay. Squire Blackburn.
Thank you, Judge. Robert, how many homes are on that lane right now on Wellington?
Fronting on Wellington, I believe there's only 2.
Okay, and how many lots are there?
There are a total of, originally there were a total of 28. There have been 2 minor plat consolidations, so the total number currently is at 26, roughly.
Okay, now, and one last question. I noticed on the report that road superintendent said that he would have liked to have seen it being seeded and strawed. Has that been done?
I'm not sure if it's been completed. That work is part of the contract that the developer has with his excavation contractor. I'm not sure if John Mitchell's on the line, if he could address that. I haven't been back out there since this most recent inspection.
John Mitchell, you on the line?
Yeah, I'm here. I haven't been back out to check and see if that was done. That was just one little short spot that evidently the weather got to them. But no, it's no big deal. It looks good to me.
All right. Squire Muller.
Thank you, Judge. Robert, don't we usually wait and take the roads over after the development is finished being built out? I thought we waited until kind of the last house was built.
The old subdivision regulations required that the road be considered for acceptance at 80% build out. That is not the case in the current regulations. per the current regulations in subdivision proposals, the developer has two options for the public improvements. Option one is that they can go ahead and construct all public improvements and have them accepted by the local jurisdiction prior to the recording of the final plat. Option two is they could submit their plat and construction plans and then post a bond or letter of credit for 125% of the estimated improvement cost, and then that plat could be recorded. So in short, we don't require the full build out. One of the main reasons we don't.
I guess my question then is on the proposal, I guess, for asphalt and things like that. Are they looking to do like final coat and all that with this bid?
Well, it's already been done.
Oh, it has?
Yes.
Yeah.
I require.
That's why we're approving it.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
that quote was to look at the scope of work based on their contractor's review as well as the
Okay.
county's review of the road condition. So,
All right. Thank you.
yes, sir. Looks very nice out there.
Squire Sebastian?
Thank you, Judge. Just a question in regard to the way I understood the response to that question. There were two existing homes on this street. There are 26 lots left to build. I'm presuming that this is a connecting street to other lots. Do we know how many within that subdivision are required to be built out? Because obviously, or platted for built out?
Well, all lots front on Wellington Lane. So I'm not sure I understand the question.
It's not, you didn't understand. I asked if this was a connecting street to other potential lots for build out.
Well, there is a future street shown on the recorded plat. The developer at the Planning Commission meeting last night requested to amend the plat to eliminate the future street. That quote unquote future street is merely a platted right of way and it is unimproved. It was a requirement from the current subdivision regulations that a development adjacent to an undeveloped property provide street connectivity. So last evening, the Planning Commission tabled the item to allow the developer to provide a concept plan of how this subdivision would eliminate that future street right of way and future subdivision lot consolidations before they made a final decision. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, that helped. I'm looking at the map here and it looks like it is this is a subdivision with one street. It appears to be that. There is some space, it appears, at the back. So you're saying that there will be no additional street that comes off of Wellington, correct?
That is correct. At the end of the cul-de-sac, there are conservation easements because this was originally platted as a cluster subdivision. So that's why these lots appear to be much smaller, because there was a trade-off from the regulations that that you were allowed to make smaller lots, but you had to put the extra acreage in a conservation easement.
And looking at this, I guess this drone footage, it appears that there are two houses, I presume, at the front of this. Do they have connectivity to Wellington, or are they purely off of South Benson?
They come off of South Benson.
So they're not included as part of this subdivision plating?
They are. That was phase one that's filed in the deed room and plat cabinet G slide 300.
But they do not have, I guess, an access road onto Wellington from those properties. Is that correct?
Correct. They have the ability to access Wellington if they chose to.
Okay.
Because they're corner, two of lots 3 and 28 are corner lots, so they have the option. Lots 1 and 2, well, lot 1 is a corner lot to Echo Springs and South Benson, so it has that option of either street. But then lot 2 only has access to South Benson.
Okay. And so there are 26 remaining lots to be built out. So typically there's quite a bit of construction equipment that would need to access the road. So has that been taken under consideration by the Planning Commission? I guess the volume, if this subdivision is built out and it comes into the county road system. So if the asphalt's broken up, et cetera, then the county would be responsible for coming in and fixing that. Is that correct? Would that be correct? If we assume it into the county road system at this point?
No, ma'am. Either the utility company or the home builder or the like would be responsible for patching the road network. And an encroachment permit would be required by Mr. Mitchell at the road department to ensure that it is, to have the financial means in the event that the road cut is not done properly. Of course, there's always an option for boring under the roadway as well.
Right, but you're talking about in a specific location. Let's say that the lot is at the back of the subdivision and, there's concrete trucks come in and a variety of other, they're traveling on the full breadth of the roadway. And if the asphalt gets broken up on the way in and out, I think the way I'm understanding your response earlier was just at the boring of the home site, not necessarily traversing the whole lane to get back to that spot. If it gets broken up due to cold and thawing and a lot of trucks coming in with heavy material.
If accepted into the maintenance system, any damage related to road traffic would be the responsibility of the county to repair, much like any other road that we have in the system. So in that example, yes, we would make those repairs, make those spot repairs.
Right, but we're talking about a subdivision that's plotted out for 26 additional properties and only 2 of them have been taken at this point. So there is the opportunity for that to happen if there's a volume of construction that happens. And certainly we all want the construction. Certainly we want that. We want more people living in Franklin County in plotted out subdivisions. I'm just trying to make sure I understand who would be responsible for repairs should they be needed based on construction work that we're hoping will happen.
Well, yeah, as I said, it depends on the type of construction work. So for instance, to elaborate, the use of that roadway by concrete trucks, dump trucks and the like is definitely a likelihood, as well as garbage trucks, fire trucks, school buses, and heavy load vehicles. So it would be hard to pinpoint who would have damaged that section. But if there is a true road cut required, say for a utility connection, then that would fall on the responsibility of whoever did that road cut. So we got 2 scenarios going. One, the county is responsible. The second example, the county is not responsible. So hope that helps.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Mitchell and Robert, we have a lot of that construction going on. I know in the subdivision across from me, the Augusta subdivision, there's probably 10, 15 homes being built in there. John, how often do you have to go back and repave after a road has got its second coat on? Do you have to do that very much?
No, not really. I mean, once these roads are built to our standards, which this road has been brought up to that standard, and I believe the road will hold up. I mean, it's been there for 15 years or more already. So, it's done worked in pretty good. It's been updated and I think the road's fine. And no, I mean, most times, we inspect our roads before we bring them in pretty well and they seem to hold up. And, blaming it all on the construction traffic is not, it's not all construction. Trash trucks are really hard on roads.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Squire Moore?
And what's the sewer situation out here? Be on septic systems or on a pump station? What's the situation there for 27, 28 lots?
They would be on individual septic systems. However, this subdivision is unique in that it's on a fill and wait requirement from the health department. So material has to be brought in, good material has to be brought in and has to sit for 1 year. And then the health department would do their analysis.
And could someone buy 2 lots and build the one house on the 2 lots?
Those two, if that were the case, the 2 lots would need to be consolidated if there were an issue with the home being, too close or over the property line that separates the 2 lots.
Yeah.
The reason that the planning commission tabled the item last night is because the current developer intends to further consolidate more lots in an attempt to provide adequate acreage for, a septic system.
Yeah, because that was my concern. I don't think the lots are big enough in that crawfish area right there for good septic systems. And there's not that much topsoil left in Franklin County to haul in there.
Right. So the planning commission wanted to see the concept that the current developer is proposing to consolidate lots. So, so while this may have started out as a 28 lot subdivision, it may end up down to, 20.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Squire Blackburn, you had your hand up.
Squire Moore covered the bases on my question. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any more questions on this item? Okay, the next item is authorization to award a construction contract to BEX Construction for improvements to the building at 231 East Main. And I think this is bid package number 2. And this is the final piece, isn't it? Robert, you want to talk about that?
Yes, sir. You're correct. This will be the final bid package, fingers crossed, for this project for the 231 East Main Street building to accommodate the Simon House. This package is for the completion of the first floor fit up. In general terms, this will complete construction of the ADA restroom on the first floor with walk-in shower and other restroom facilities, small little knee wall. There may be some hardware that goes in on this bid package. The architect is on the line today and can answer any specific questions to any other work that needs to be done. As indicated in the background of your agenda abstract, bid package number 1 specific to the HVAC and electric upgrade is nearing completion. Thankfully, the HVAC is operational, and the building is now completely climate controlled from the building wide system. So that's great news. Other work has been done. I did separate bid packages, as the court's aware, for concrete cutting for the emergency egress door, and also a separate bid for the new egress door and transom itself. So we're moving along. It took a while to get where we are, but we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay, Squire Blackburn, your hand was up first.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Judge. Robert, it says on the financial impact, we've got 100,000 each with the city. They're going to give 100,000. We're going to give 100,000. This particular bid 62,926. So are we going to be responsible for half of that? And if so, where are we at right now on how much of the 100,000 we've committed? How much of that's been spent? And how much do we have left before this bid is awarded?
You're correct in that this bid package would be split evenly between the city and the county, the 62,926. As it relates to the current construction costs, I don't have those available because the treasurer is also including the temporary cooling measures that were installed by the maintenance department. So I don't have those values. We did receive a draft document from the architect as it relates to his fees. So I do anticipate this project going over budget.
Are we over budget right now, or have we met that threshold yet?
Let's see, let me double check. Bid package 1.
I think we're probably just right on it, not quite over it. Because we hadn't paid the architect yet. So when the architectural fee is going to cause it to go over as well.
That is correct. I'm trying to look up the the re-advertised bid tabulation.
So we haven't even got
Robert, this is,
paint or trim or flooring or fixtures or.
Mr. Ossie's on the line. I think, Mr. Ossie, did you want to say something?
yes, bid package number 1 for the HVAC work and electrical with Hills Electric was $137,068 previously approved. So when you add in the cost of this proposal from Beck's Construction, that additional 62,926 brings the total to 199,994. That is just for the construction costs. There have been other costs that you've incurred directly. You did excavation, you've cut out a section of concrete wall, you've done door hardware work, and there will be soft costs, and there's potential for change orders. And we have, you always have to plan for a contingency. So far, we've been blessed and not had a bunch of that come up on the first project. So can we guarantee a price on everything? No, but we've hit the construction cost at 200,000, basically.
$6 shy, $199,994.
Squire Blackburn,
Yeah,
Squire Blackburn, the concrete cutting was $950. And then the aluminum door or the metal door with transom was $4,770.
So what's, I mean, I go back to Squire Sturgeon. What's the bottom line? Where are we going to be at? What do we think we're going to be at? I mean, apparently our first estimate was not even close. So I don't know if
I think
we're even asking on what's left or not.
I think we're probably going to be somewhere below 300,000 for including the architect and the total package. So we may, we'll probably have to go back to the city and ask for 50 more thousand, and from us 50 more thousand. So I've already alerted the city to that as a possibility, and they're aware that that's a possibility. But we're way under what the original bid was.
Well, we missed our estimate by 50%, which is scary. So
Yeah,
I just want to make sure that any future projects, we get our hands wrapped around it and we make good estimates.
Well, you also know what this climate is.
Oh, absolutely. I buy lumber every day.
Okay. Squire Muller?
Thank you, Judge. Robert or Mr. Austin, I guess my question is, so we had two people turn in bids for this phase, correct?
Yes.
I guess we don't have copies of those. Are they time stamped, or how do we accept bids, just so I know?
Yes, the sealed bids are date and time stamped, and then in the judge executive's office, i.e. his front office, they're maintained there, and then I retrieve them when it's time to open the bids.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Thank you, Robert. And I want to say once again, thank you to Mr. Aussie. Thank you to Jeremy and you, Robert, for moving this forward. Once again, we're hoping for, knocking on wood, praying for, before the first of the year, this project is complete. Robert, let's now go. As you can see, there's 8 items on the agenda that Robert Hewitt is dealing with. Robert is very busy. He's working extremely hard. We asked for a full-time planner position. You compromised and made it a part-time planner position. And we're excited that we have an applicant that would like to take this position. And Betty Jo, I'll let you speak about that, or Robert, well, either one of you. Robert, you want to go first while Betty gets on the line?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So we have an applicant who is willing to accept the part-time position as the planner. The individual is currently a full-time employee with the state with extensive GIS or computer mapping abilities and works with PVA offices across the state and updating their systems. This individual also has a certification in geographic information systems, so that qualification is extremely helpful to the activities of our department. This individual is motivated to get into the field of land use planning. An interview was conducted with both myself, Judge Wells, and Deputy Judge Herod. We were quite impressed, and I would recommend that the fiscal court approve the hiring of this person, pending the required testing and background check.
Squire Muller.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you again, Robert. Hey, Robert, just curious, how many applications do we have for this position?
We had 0.
Okay, thank you.
Just came in late, last minute.
Squire Blackburn.
I see on his employment history, he's currently working right now. Is he planning on doing both?
No, can't do both. He's resigning his position. He wants to work part-time.
Okay. That's good.
Hey, judges, if you don't mind, Robert, we actually received 3 applications for this position.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, you talking about from way back in July?
Yeah, right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought since none of that ever occurred, I was thinking about the second round of advertisements that we've done.
And we actually have advertised twice.
Yes, I included that information in the abstract.
Okay, my apologies. I was only thinking of the second round of advertisement that we had, in which we had no applications up until this gentleman. But prior to the first round of advertisement, we had 3 applications and 2 were qualified.
We've spent, right, and I think we've spent close to about $2,000 on advertising costs for this position.
Okay, nope. Any other questions? Okay, the next item, oh boy, this is exciting, getting to move forward on this. Authorization to approve a resolution relating to the acquisition of land identified as a portion of property located at 350 Lewis Ferry Road from the H.G. Mays Corporation. Robert?
Yes, so negotiations were held, and the owner agreed to sell a portion of the property to the county. We did receive a written statement indicating their willingness to sell the property at a given price. That was received late yesterday and forwarded on to the county attorney and the deputy judge. With that, it would assist us in the goal of acquiring the proper acreage for construction or reconstruction of the road department, and I recommend approval.
Okay. And as a sister portion to this property, the next item is authorization to approve a resolution relating to the acquisition of land identified as 0.95 acre property located on Lewis Ferry Road, further known as PVA map, whatever. I'll get to that in the voting session. And this is from the Liebman estate. Robert, and this is the second piece of property that was needed to be acquired.
Yes, it is, sir. So additional negotiations with this property owner did occur, and it was agreed upon in the purchase amount identified in your resolution. Of course, with both of these, the county would incur the closing costs, recording fees, and any other miscellaneous expenses. With this, I do recommend approval. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I do want Mr. Sparks to come on, because this one is going to require a little bit different process because it is in the state and it's out of state estate. Counselor, are you on? Are you there? Counselor
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. At the end of the day, those will be just some details what I plan on doing and have to do if the court accepts this offer for purchase at this amount is provide to the seller a real estate purchase agreement, and then it will be the seller's obligation to ensure that proper authorizations made to convey, sell, etc., the property to the county. It's just a hurdle, but there will be some additional steps. So we're probably going to be looking at a little bit of a lengthier time frame to close it. Both of these properties, as y'all are aware, are adjacent to the existing road department property. And this will allow the county to have the entirety in fee simple under one plat, one map, one deed, without having ancillary property affected by road department usage, and give you a broader footprint.
Okay. Any questions on either one of these pieces of property? John Mitchell, you ready to get this going, moving forward?
Yeah, let's go. Ready.
Okay, all right. You got it. All right. I don't see any other questions, so we're going to move forward. Thank you. Robert, the next item is authorization to approve declaring 501 Home Street as surplus property and authorizing the judge executive to execute all necessary documents for the property to be sold through a realtor. And last meeting, I believe we were talking about, there was a request for a piece of the property. In the meantime, there's also been a request to buy all of the property. And I think that in consultation with Mr. Sparks, we just felt like it's better to just declare the property as surplus so we can sell it and then have a realtor market it. Squire Moore?
Yes, Judge. I think we should put this off until the next meeting when we can go into closed session and talk about the price that we want to ask for this if we don't like the appraised value, because I don't think that's something we should be doing out in public.
We do have an appraisal in. Are you saying that you don't feel like
I don't like that appraisal, and I don't think that should be our bottom dollar. So that's just my 2 cents worth.
So do we have to, Counselor Sparks, do we have to go into closed session and discuss what the bottom dollar is if you have a realtor, or is the appraisal, can you get more than the appraisal amount, or do we have to declare this is our asking price and it being more than the appraised value? Because I'm thinking.
No. I just remind the court what the issue is before the court today. Your first step is to declare it as possible as surplus for consideration of sale. And I understand that the judge executive is asking the court for leave to hire professional services in the form of a realtor to market it. And then certainly at the time and the negotiations for sale price will be appropriate in closed session, totally appropriate. It's one of the statutory exceptions. But as far as what's before you today, it's just simply the declaration of surplus to allow you to move forward and offer it to sale to the general public to try to get the highest and best price. That's 2 steps. That's 2 steps down the line for actual approval of a given purchase price.
Well, I understand that, but if we give the judge executive authority to market it, he needs to have guidelines on the price.
Well, the minimum would be the appraisal, wouldn't it? You can go above the appraisal.
But we're not putting it on auction. It's just,
I'm sorry.
I don't know.
I see the point that you're getting at. In terms of the listing price, I understand, Squire.
I'm willing to listen if anybody else has any thoughts on it.
Squire Blackburn?
Yes, thank you, Judge. It was my understanding we had a motivated buyer.
We had a
So I-
motivated, okay, my first comment was we had a motivated buyer for a piece. Then we had another buyer saying that they'd like to buy the whole thing. So I can't get in there and say, well, we'll sell a piece and then it's best that we just surplus it and then let it market itself. I didn't want to, I didn't want to
That
go
makes
through
sense.
that process. Squire Tracy?
Thank you, Judge. Obviously, there's been some news that's been put out that there's going to be a lot of money spent in that area or coming to that area. Looks like this appraisal was done on the 11th. I'm not sure how the word now that all this money is going to be spent in that area, how that would affect the property value, but I can't imagine that it wouldn't do anything but help it. So I agree with Squire Moore. And again, also, if we are fortunate enough to build a road facility, we may need that property for a storage area or while that project's going on.
Well, I asked John Mitchell that, and John, you can reiterate, if you would, tell Squire, tell the court that your thoughts are you don't need that property. You want to go ahead with, say what you have told me, John?
Yeah, we'll be fine without that. I don't think that's an issue.
Okay.
I appreciate that. I respect it. But again, they're the unknowns, kind of like that. We just talked about the building. It's the unknowns. You never know. You might need it. So that's where I'm at.
So you're saying you're making a recommendation we don't sell it, Squire Tracy, is that correct?
I haven't made a recommendation at all. I just gave you my thoughts.
Okay. Squire Muller.
Thank you, Judge. I think to Squire Tracy's point, we all saw that news article last week. I mean, they're going to dump over $600,000 in that area. So I don't think we have to sell it, and I think it makes sense to me to sit on it. I think the value is only going to increase, and with a couple of construction projects that we're looking at, I'm not saying we're going to need it for that, but I don't think we're in a position we have to sell it. And I think it would make better fiscal sense to hold on to it and let the value go up, and then if we can decide at any point to sell it. So that's where I am.
And I understand. So the raise grant is actually a planning grant. So we're several years away. This money was great because it's going to plan on what can be done, how the road, what the sidewalks are going to look like. So selling this is actually a good thing because it gets a developer in there this raise grant is going to help a developer if they had that property, as they say, okay, now that I've got this coming, I can build this in there, and this would be a nice project for the area. That's what even the developers are telling me without knowing that the raise grant was going to come through. So remember, the raise grant is just a planning piece there. And it's great that we got it. I'm very happy that we got it, but it's the first step in several steps in moving this development, which definitely needs to happen forward. But anyway, if you don't want to sell it, we will hold off all calls, and we'll just tell people you don't want to sell it. I need your direction. Tell me that this was one piece to surplus it, and if you don't want to do that, tell me what you want to do. Squire Moore is going in a different direction. Squire Muller and Tracy are going in another direction. And the court is split. So I need a decision. Give me an idea. Do you want to take it off the agenda? Are there 4 votes to take it off the agenda, or do you want to, if we go and surplus it, you don't have to sell it. But you do get some ideas on what its value would be if you wanted to. But that's fine, whatever y'all want to do. Squire Tracy.
Judge, I'm not against selling the property, nor did I ever say that. I'm fine with doing what Squire Moore wants to do. I agree. I think the appraisal is low, especially after hearing what we read in the paper. So I'm okay with doing exactly what Squire Moore said.
Okay. So you want to go into not sell it at this point in time and go back in and have a closed session in the next to talk about the price?
Absolutely. This is our second conversation on the property. One was in closed session, so we couldn't discuss it. It appears that you've had multiple conversations from people that may be interested in buying it. So yeah, I think we get behind closed doors and talk about it.
Okay. You don't see a problem with that, do you, Counselor Sparks?
You mean to table it and just hold on to it and table the resolution and declare it surplus?
No, to not do any, to not move forward on anything and then go into.
You got to break down the question. The first question before the court is whether or not you can declare it surplus. If the answer to that is no, then the next step would be to go back into closed session. But don't lose track of what you're doing today. And if you're going to table it, that's fine. Then how you choose to proceed for further discussions. But it is a proper subject for consideration in closed session. And that's also just a reminder that there's no authorization to sell. That's not the point of this resolution. And certainly if you deem it appropriate to table or to not vote or not approve this resolution to declare it surplus, you're just back to square one.
Squire Moore?
If that's the case, then this should say to be listed through a realtor, not sold through a realtor.
I appreciate parsing that language, but it's not an approval for sale.
Okay.
Okay. Squire Blackburn.
Counselor Sparks, what's to stop us from like doing the direction we are, holding this on the table, going into closed session and talking about and discussing the price and then moving forward? What do you think is the best course of action?
There are certain critical points in property once you declare it appropriate for surplus. It's kind of difficult to disentangle that. So if you're going to go into that direction, you want more discussion on it, then it's extremely appropriate to table it, withdraw the resolution, whatever you want to call it. But if you're not going to declare it surplus right now, then this needs to be off the table. That's why I said square one. It's literally square one.
Okay. Squire Sebastian.
Thank you, Judge. Just based on us having a very quick discussion about this in closed session, I'd be in favor of pulling it off today. I don't think we've thoroughly vetted this issue internally before making this a matter, putting it before the public. So I'd really like to go back to that as the counselor indicated, to square one. And I think square one is pulling it off the agenda today for discussion.
Okay, I'm pulling it off. We spent too much time on it to still go back to square one, so I'll pull it off. It will not be on, but I will put it on closed session to discuss it more in depth at our next meeting. All right, the next item is authorization to approve a resolution adopting and approving the execution of a rural secondary program agreement between the Fiscal Court and the Commonwealth of Kentucky Transportation Cabinet Department of Rural Municipal Aid, and accepting all roads and streets referred to therein as being a part of the county road system. John Mitchell.
Yes, this is an agreement with the state with the 80-20 program for bridge replacement that we've been getting design work on, the Gregory Woods Bridge. So we signed up and they agreed. So we're one step closer. That should help us out. The estimate was around 200,000 for this project. So if we can get them to pay 80,000, we're doing good. So hopefully we'll get this done by spring or summer next year.
Okay. All right, Squire Sebastian.
Thank you, Judge. I was just a little confounded about the notice for the authorization because it says it's to approve to a resolution adopting and approving the execution of the secondary road program. And it talks about inside the document, the first couple of pages, it talks about referencing all roads and streets. But then the agreement and then it says see agreement, and then the agreement attached is only for Gregory Woods. So the way the resolution stands, and maybe the counselor can help out with this, if we approve that, does that make it sound like that the only road we're approving in the county road system is Gregory Woods Bridge? And it's not a full road? I just want to make sure I understand, because the way the styling of the resolution, it was just gave me a question about that.
The actual document itself appears to be restricted to just one area.
Right, the agreement does, but the styling of it, it talks about accepting, it's a references all roads and streets. So within Franklin County, I'm just trying to make sure I understand the distinction, if there is one, that's all. And so hopefully you can help me with that. Thank you.
The agreement's restricted to just one area. It doesn't cover all the roads. It read that to say all roads on the agreement. The agreement's what's driving it.
So Tambra, you wrote this because this is the way the state said write it. I'm not sure. Go ahead.
I did not write the resolution. This is a standard resolution that the state sends us.
Yes, ma'am,
They
that's
submit
right.
this to us for adoption. So this is not something that has been written internally. This came directly from the state.
Sure, I'm just referencing the first line of it. It says the fiscal court does hereby certify that all roads and streets referenced to in said agreement are now county roads as defined by KRS 178.10 subsection 1B. And so then the agreement that's attached only talks about Gregory Woods Bridge. That's the only reason. That's the only reason.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. That's the document referenced in the resolution. Yes, that's why I said the agreement's what's driving it. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
The only matter before you talk about is Gregory Woods.
Yeah. And that's what it says. It says all the roads that you're going to be talking about in this agreement are county roads, right?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
I'm just trying to make sure I understood it. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I understand it. Okay. All right. The next item. Oh boy, this is exciting. The next item is authorization to hire a new fire chief. Chief Brian Brewer, Assistant Chief Brian Brewer, Betty Jo.
Yes, this is to hire a replacement for Kevin Hutchinson that we're going to sadly miss. He's retiring December 31st of this year. We received 5 applications, which was awesome. One did withdrew his application, and we interviewed 4. And we feel like with the qualifications and the degree and experience, we are recommending, the interview committee was Judge Wells, Deputy Herod, myself, and Lambert Moore. And the interview committee is recommending Brian Brewer to be the next fire chief. We're asking for, it is a 2A position in the classification. And we're asking for 84,864. That was also the applicant's request. If you have any questions.
Betty, I want to say this. There was some discussion that went out that questioned why we would not do this externally as opposed to internally. And I think the committee, when we interviewed those 4 candidates, were very, very impressed with the all 4 candidates, and that we were we're very pleased with how this process moves through our fire department, and that that there is a process to move up, and that obviously the people that were eligible and that applied were extremely competent, and we're very proud that we had such great candidates. And so internally in this case worked very well. Would you not agree, Betty?
Oh, yes, 100%. There was a lot of qualified candidates and we was very impressed. The fire department is a unique department because they do promote within engineers, captain, lieutenant, and battalion chief. So that's a great process.
No. Any questions? Okay, Squire Moore, you want to go first, and then Squire Blackburn?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we did have some great interviewers, and every one of them agreed with hiring internally like we are, because it gives the guys coming on an avenue for advancement, and it helps with morale within the department. So, and again, just every one of them were just very good interviewers.
Okay, thank you, Squire. Squire Blackburn.
Yes, thank you, Judge. Yeah, Lambert, you just said that all the interviewers were in agreement. I know the fire committee didn't meet on this. In fact, we haven't met in a long time. And I agree totally with internal mobility and moving up. But at the same time, I'm sure all of us would agree that we want to be led and directed by the most capable, competent person, whether they be internal or external. So I know there was a mess in the last time that a chief was hired. There was a lot of talk of the magistrates weren't involved. I know the fire committee wasn't involved on this one. So I don't want to cause a stink. I think it's a good thing we've got somebody that's competent and qualified. And I just want to know, did the applicant state what vision they had, what they were going to do to move our or any of the applicants for that matter, to move our fire department in a more modernized direction, to get up to speed with surrounding counties and things like that?
Yes, and let me clear up something about the fire committee. Committees don't handle the hiring of the department heads or chiefs. That's established through an ordinance. So the committees handle the issues that may come about, whether to buy a fire truck or what type of truck or those types of things, but they don't handle personnel. And that's not what committees are set up for. So that's just a clarification on that. But
no,
yes.
I understand that, Judge, but I just thought maybe the committee could have some input into some questions that the panel that was put together by you could ask.
Well, the panel that was put together by me is by ordinance. And I assure you that vision was asked by everybody, and that every one of them had great vision for, and not just what is your vision, but how would you implement the vision? More importantly, that's the question to ask. Not what is your vision, but how would you go about implementing it? So yes, it was asked, and they all had great vision. That's part of why we were proud of why these 4 candidates that interviewed. They were fantastic.
Can I ask what that vision and implementation plan was?
Well, if you want to ask, well, I don't want to put words in Chief Brewer's mouth. I'll let you ask him. I'll bring him up and let you ask him. Chief Brewer? But I'm not sure that's a fair thing, though. I don't want. Maybe that's not a fair thing to say. I'm gonna back off on that. Chief Brewer, would you like to talk about anything in that? and you know, Squire, you're laughing, but I don't want to get in, the last thing I want is any kind of personnel
No.
action that's gonna hurt us.
Judge, this is Betty Jo. I believe that is completely inappropriate
Yeah,
at this
I'm
time.
thinking-
That is, okay, thank you.
I agree with you. I don't think that's a fair question to ask, but Chief Brewer, thank you for, do you want to have any, do you have any comments, Chief Brewer, before we go into this process? I mean, go into hiring?
I would like to thank the court and the judge and the hiring committee for the opportunity, whatever decision is. The future of the fire department with internal candidates, I think, is bright. You know, I think one thing that we really look forward to doing in the future is getting back out in the community, which COVID has really put a hamper on our ability to do that. And I think our future is mainly about community involvement and doing what's best for Franklin County as a whole.
Did you feel like the process was fair, the questioning and all of that, Chief Brewer?
I do. I talked to the other candidates who interviewed as well, and all of them were excited about the possibility of internal. I think it really gave the guys a lot of morale boost, knowing that they can come up and have that opportunity if they have the qualifications and their resume fits the criteria of the position.
Okay. And Squire Blackburn?
Judge, I just want to add, in no way do I think this was an unfair. I know everything was done well within the bounds of legality, and I like Assistant Chief Brewer. I think he's great. He's highly qualified. It wasn't anything about anybody in particular. I just, had some questions. That's all.
Squire Sebastian?
Thank you, Judge. I wanted to pose a question to Squire Moore, who represented the magistrates as part of this process. If he could talk to us maybe a little bit about some of the discussion in regard to retention. I think we have talked about this in the number of benefits and compensation committee meetings, not just for this position, but across government. And we are not the only government facing the challenge of retention. State government's facing it. City governments facing it, county governments that are contiguous and non-contiguous are facing it. So I just wanted to hear what his thoughts were in regard to the questions that were asked in regard to retention, because that's a huge issue facing all departments, especially the fire department. We're told that routinely.
Well, a lot of that is the internal interviewing and giving these guys something to look forward to. And a lot of the applicants talked about ways of rewarding the up and coming firemen. And I don't know if that's really appropriate in this heading, but that's really all I have to.
Now, let me help you with that, Squire Moore. Retention was definitely, it was a huge issue. Training was talked about as part of the retention and trying to help them and encouraging more training and providing more training. Pay is an issue as well. They were all very appreciative of what we have done through the change in the healthcare, providing, cutting some of the costs. Every one of them agreed that was huge, and it's in helping retain our firefighters. But the biggest piece, as the elephant in the room, as always, is pay. And so morale is part of it, keeping morale up, training as being part of the morale. All of them agreed that more training is important. And then the elephant is money. we gotta stay competitive the best we can monetarily. So that's in a nutshell what was discussed.
So there was some discussion of retention, because I think that is one of the things that
Absolutely.
has to be absolutely on the radar for us going forward in whatever department. So I'm pleased to hear that that was part of the consideration. Now, I have something else I want to just bring up. See if this was discussed maybe by the committee itself outside of the applicants. Certainly, we're losing a very experienced veteran of the department who has retired once, and this fortunately will be a second opportunity for him to enjoy that. But, you know, I think given Chief Hutcherson's 28 years of service, you know, that is a very lofty thing for us to look toward for new individuals, as we talked about, because of the new tiers, et cetera, coming on that pose a problem with retention and recruitment, et cetera. But, you know, we've been fortunate to have Chief Hutcherson for 28 years. You know, really 8 of those leading the department as chief, and then 20 of those, you know, going from boots up to where he retired, I guess, as battalion chief. Given that, when he started, he didn't start at this salary, I think, that has been discussed with us. He started at a different level, and I realized that was a few years ago, but that offered an opportunity for growth. You know, and spacing among employees. And I think that's one of the key things I continue to hear Squire Moore talk about. So I'm hopeful that was discussed among the panelists. But, you know, I would be concerned about us. Concerned's not the right word. I just want to hear the discussion, I guess, by the committee about setting the salary level, because we're setting it for someone who has about half the experience at the 100% level of what the retiring chief is making now. And I know we've heard that a variety of times, that is, at least I know we've talked about that in every other position. So I think it warrants some discussion today in that regard, just so I can understand what the committee felt about that. Thank you. And eager to hear.
Joe. I can answer that. We actually did discuss that in depth. Of the salary, and basically there's a big difference there. This candidate Ron Brewer has a bachelor's degree in fire science. That's huge. He also has an associate degree, so that was one big difference of the salary. And due to Brian's experience too, and the difference between the battalion chief right now and the assistant chief and the chief, it's pretty narrow. But the main thing is it was the education.
So let's go back 8 years. Unfortunately, and it seems like, and I'm hoping that you all aren't going this way, but 8 years ago, lowballing people, new hirees, was kind of the norm. And you ask about retention. It was very clear that the 4 candidates that we interviewed said that we have to be competitive with salaries. This is what this was discussed, and even the outgoing fire chief said that's great. It's what he's getting, because the outgoing fire chief, unfortunately, was lowballed when he came in, and so what he's leaving at is a decent salary. But you compare him to the city of Frankfurt, and what there's about $40,000 difference. I'm just saying that we have got to be competitive, and at least we're bringing our new chief in at a fire chief's rate. It may be on the low end, but he'll have a chance to work his way up salary wise. So I don't think any of us, none of us said that he should be lower because of his experience, and from the mere fact that we thought that our present chief salary was too low as well. So that's it. That's it in a nutshell. Betty, do you concur?
That's 100% correct. He was lowball when he came in. I was on the committee, and the only reason he took the position is, for one, he was wanting to come back to the fire department. And he already retired once, so the salary wasn't that big of a difference to him. The other candidates, it was crazy. They was wanting like 120 and 150. Lambert may remember that, but that's the difference, and he can speak on that also. But that's what happened.
Well, I don't remember what the previous fire chiefs, I wasn't on that committee. There was a magistrate on that committee though, when Kevin was hired. But some of the applicants this time were asking for more than this. And we did discuss it in length.
Squire Muller.
Thank you, Judge. I appreciate it. Betty Jo, just so I know, and I thought I read it somewhere, but I can't find it. What is the assistant salary? Where is Assistant Chief Brewer at, I guess, currently?
I don't have that with me. Brian, do you have?
The current salary is listed as $73,827.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
No problem.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Congratulations. I hope we're going to vote here, and I think it's awesome. You'll be a great judge. I mean, not judge, a fire chief, sorry. A little tired here. Excuse me for that. The next item is authorization to advertise bids for fleet management services. This is coming to us because there are some proposals, and we've gone through the committee with this, and this the fleet management program offers us some avenues that I think is kind of exciting, at the very least, from the sheriff's department's need for vehicles. So I've asked that the sheriff and some people, I've asked that we get an RFP for fleet management, so the sheriff can at least get some concrete costs and ways that he can increase his fleet in an affordable way that will help us from our budget standpoint and help him from his fleet standpoint. Squire Tracy.
Thank you, Judge. I can see this potentially being a good program for the sheriff's office. But could one of the committee members explain to me how this program would be an asset countywide?
There's two parts to how they do things. One that you're going to be leasing the vehicles, and two, that they follow the value of the vehicles. And if the value of the vehicles is more than what you paid for it after a year, they'll want you they'll buy the vehicles back, and you'll take the money, the asset money that you earned, and put that back towards a new group of vehicles. So basically, you're going to pay X amount. And if the vehicles, and many of them are, especially the trucks or in the fleet that you're talking about, Squire, the value is going up, like F-150s. You buy them for X, and the next year they're 10% more. And so they're saying that when they see that the value of the vehicles is more than what you paid for, or will give you some profit, they'll come back and buy back from you, and you can use that money once again to go back into the lease program. So this allows you through the leasing process to, I'm sorry, they don't buy it back. They actually give you the money, the excess and the monies to use towards leasing them back. But the leasing process if you take, for example, and trust me, I'm not an expert on this, so don't pin me down exactly, but they did talk with Squire Muller and Squire Sebastian. And what they're saying is you can lease a new vehicle, sheriff's vehicle, a Tahoe, for about $9,000 a year. So $9,000 a year, as opposed to buying it for $40,000. And so that $9,000, if their value of the vehicle, if it's a $40,000 vehicle and the value is over $40,000 after a year, then you could get that excess fees and put it back into a new vehicle and lease the new vehicle the following year with those monies going towards that. So there are many situations, according to them, that where people or counties are saving quite a bit of money on as part of their fleet management. So newer vehicles, quicker, which lowers the maintenance cost on them, and it brings in better quality vehicles for your fleet. That's the bottom line. That's the easy version of the simple version of what they do. But we're not at the point of going in with anybody yet. The point is that we can't go in. We can't do any more than just hear their basic spiel until we do an RFP for someone to really get into the nitty gritty of fleet management.
Right. And I agree with you. I could see it potentially being a benefit for the sheriff's office, but what sold I guess Squire Muller, Squire Sebastian, what sold you all on this program?
If you don't mind if I could answer, Judge. So I am currently under strategic planning. We had a presentation from, I believe, Enterprise. And they talked about how basically that's how they make their money is on these commercial accounts. I just don't know if we're to the point that we know enough about them, kind of like the judge just said. I do think it will work potentially for certain departments. I don't think for the whole county. I still think we need to look at the fleet maintenance. I still think with over 200 employees, and I'm not even sure how many vehicles and things we have between all the different areas that we need to be looking at doing, fleet maintenance on our own to better figure out, when to sell things, maintaining them ourselves. I think there could be a lot of money saved there. I'm not against this. I just don't know if we have enough information yet to put together an RFP as far as what we're actually looking for. So that's just kind of my 2 cents from a committee member.
Well, if we don't send out an RFP, we're not going to get any more information than what we got. So the RFP is so we can, there's no commitment with an RFP. You just get a company that you can sit down and you can get into. I think fleet maintenance is a huge part of what they're trying to sell us as well, Squire, as part of this process. So all I'm asking for is for us to send out an RFP. We'll see what we got. We'll see if it's worthwhile. If it's not, we won't do it. But they'll come back and present it to all of us as part of the court. As part of court, that's what I would say. They definitely come back and do again with strategic planning and give you more in depth. So it's just the next step in trying to find out more is all it is. No commitment, just trying to find out more information. Squire Tracy.
Yeah, I can just chime in regard to being part of this. We had a presentation from a group. They were going to get some information to us about other communities that are utilizing their services. And so, my personal next step would be reaching out to those counties that are in the Commonwealth to see what their experience is, not necessarily with just this firm, but just in general in a fleet management program before I would, think that it would be a prudent next step to issue an RFP. I'd like to just have a little more ground information before we release an RFP, just to hear the good and the bad, to see what we're looking at, because that helps. If we do go the route of the RFP, that helps inform how we write the RFP, so we can get exactly the product that we need to get. So I'm not necessarily yet at the RFP stage because I haven't done the research with other communities that are using a fleet management company. So
Well, I
that's
have, and they asked you to,
based on
add-
what we had discussed at our meeting. Thank you.
they asked us to, the Franklin County Health Department does it. And Judy says it's fantastic for them. Casey Ellis at Owen County does it. Those are the two neighbors, and he loves it as well. So I mean, I've asked, but if you don't want to do it, that's fine. If you don't want to, I'm just trying to think ahead, trying to help the situation. So we'll, if you're,
We definitely put the strategic planning committee together to think ahead. You're exactly right.
that's all what it's about.
My perspective is that I haven't been able to do the research. I'm not necessarily looking to do it with just one or two groups. They had indicated there were a variety of counties, a variety of sizes, and if this is not necessarily one size fits all in regard to fleet maintenance or management, I'm sorry, because there could be a fleet maintenance aspect to this program. So that's why it's critical, I think, to, at least from my perspective, and I think that was Squire Tracy's question, is members of the committee, what did you hear, and how are you looking at this? So I'm only answering it in that regard. I haven't been. I'm sorry.
It's probably better that you, Squire Sebastian, and you, Squire Muller, you all were given the names of the 20 some odd counties that are using this, and you give them a holler, because
right.
all we'll get back is, well, I like it or whatever. So it was really incumbent upon you all to do it.
Yes, sir, was the thing. And I had hoped to do that at the conference that I went to, but I was not able to connect with some of those counties, because I'd really like to do that one. As you said, that's absolutely what I said I would like to do. And I made the effort. I wasn't successful with some of the counties that were part of that list. So I'm trying to do that now. It's just not as simple as making sometimes the phone calls because they're like, well, this person's out, this person's out. So it's just not been as simple as following up with all those 20 counties as you may think it might be.
I didn't think it was easy. I just didn't.
No, I agree. You're correct. You're right on that. Thank you.
Okay, so let's take it off the agenda. Take that one off. Okay, the next item is second reading approval of amendment number 1 to ordinance number 6, 2021, relating to the budget for the fiscal year. Susan, you've got 3 items. Will you want to take care of the next 3 items, please?
Yeah, just a reminder, the amendment was for the purpose of the emergency situation with the Farmville Sanitation District. They will be making requests for draws against up to $200,000 for their repairs and maintenance for the Coolbrook treatment plant. We have yet to receive any requests yet, but anticipate that in the next court, I would say, for some of those funds. So this amendment will budget that line item for that amount. The the next item, the treasurer's report, of course I gave you. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question. It's listed on the document as a loan. I just want to make sure the court is clear on what that means.
As far as it's a drawdown, and I believe we just determined it would be 0 interest and pretty much the same terms as the last time around.
Just
10 years.
I'm only being sure that everybody understands what that. Thank you.
Yes. On the treasurer's report, just a couple of things I'll comment on, and if there aren't any specific questions. But again, we continue to monitor our receipts in relationship to COVID and COVID impact. And of course, tourism was very hard hit with that, with the pandemic. We had gone in 2019 with pretty much record high receipts of over $500,000 that we turned over for tourism. And then in 2000 and that same period in 2020, or fiscal year 2021, we took in less than half of what we had taken in the prior year. Well, I'm happy to report, and I'm sure Robin is happy to know and receive the benefit of, as well as the Grand Theater, that we are now, for the first 2 quarters of this fiscal year, basically at half of where we were in fiscal year 2020. So that's good news that tourism receipts, transient room receipts are recovering here in Franklin County. So that's, I think, exciting to get us back to pre-pandemic levels and in our economic, development areas of tourism. The other area of payroll, again, I think we have very positive numbers for the first 2 quarters of receipts that we booked in this fiscal year. We have basically, compared to the same 2 quarters for in 2019, we are over 100% of what we collected in 2019. So again, we are at greater than pre-pandemic levels in our payroll in some of those comparisons. And of course, we've already recognized the impact of the state payroll shrinkage, or basically because of relocation. And I'm sure everybody's aware that the biggest hit was at the city and not at the county. So those are 2 areas of figures that I did take a closer look at. And if there's any other areas, I'll be happy to address those. Just wanted to comment to Squire Blackburn. We do have project accounting that we are monitoring our projects with, so we can group our costs and our receipts associated with projects. So that 231 renovation is set up as a project. It was just kind of been a long drawn out process of getting it rolling. Of course, we've got Hills with our major contract there. And as you said, over $200,000, in contracts with this one coming up now. And we will do progress billing with the city for the project, probably very, very shortly for their share of, at least a portion of it. And it is my expectation that they are sharing in the full cost of the project, have, 50-50 is that's what I've heard, I think, throughout the discussion. So I don't have that in writing, but that's the way I'm going to bill it.
Thank you, Susan.
Yes, sir.
Susan, before you go ahead, I'm going to go back to item 19, the second reading approval amendment about Farmdale emergency. The way Tamara and I just discussed, the way it was set up was it was not a payback. It was only payback if extra monies became available to the sanitation district, because we discussed that it would be very difficult for them at this. They did not have the ability to pay back $200,000, but if and when they started to go through the process, if monies became available, they would pay back that loan. So we all did agree that they do not have the ability to pay back that loan as a payback at this point in time.
Correct. Okay. Not at this point in time.
I just wanted to make sure that so a future court doesn't come back and say, okay, we want you to pay us back, because that's not how it was set up. All right, Susan, how about payment of claims?
I like to be in charge of revenue as opposed to.
Yeah. Is there any discussion on any of the payment of claims? All right, thank you, Susan. The next item is other business. Is there any other business? The next item is constitutional offices reports, department reports, committee updates. Any of those? Squire Muller.
Thank you, Judge. I just want to touch real quick that we had another park meeting yesterday. And if you or Squire Tracy would like to weigh in, but I think it went very well. I think we're getting close to the point we'll be able to touch base with the Hitchcock group and have them start getting us some tourism numbers and some numbers on actual cost of, what the park would cost to build the way we have it on the blueprint and what it might do for our economic development. So if anybody else wants to talk about it, but I just wanted to keep the full court in, know what's going on.
Okay, just a time frame. The Parks Committee is going to meet again in the near future. We're going to do some finalization of our thoughts on the plan, and then that will be sent back to the Hitchcock group. The Hitchcock group will then prepare a final draft, and present that to the public as soon as we can get that going. And we don't have a date on that. So I don't know whether that'll be sometime in December or in January, but those are the steps that are left. So that's in addition to your update. If anybody else? I don't see any others. So let's, because we're in a time strain here, we need to, if everybody can hold it, we'll try to go through the regular meeting, the voting meeting now. And so let's switch gears and let's call this the Franklin County Fiscal Court video teleconference regular meeting, the voting session for November 19th, 2021 to order. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Squire Sebastian,
Here.
Squire Blackburn,
Present.
Squire Muller,
Present.
Squire Tracy,
Here.
Squire Booth, Squire Moore,
Here.
Judge Wells.
Here. Okay, let's stand for the pledge, and Sam is going to lead us in the pledge. Sam is the son of John and Ellie Gilbert. Hey, Sam, let's go to the pledge.
Hi, I'm Sam Gilbert. I'm a sophomore at Frankfurt High School. Please recite the pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Sam. Great job. And go Panthers, right? All right. Actually, go Flyers because they're playing tonight. Good luck to them. Okay, the first item on the agenda is authorization for approval of minutes from our regular meeting of October the 28th, 2021.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. Next item is authorization of approval of the county clerk's claim in the amount of $3,503.55 for preparing the tax bills.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. Next item is authorization for the approval of the sheriff's official receipt for property tax bills for the 2021 year.
So moved.
So moved.
Blackburn motion, Moore second, I think it was. Mueller, okay. Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. The next item is second reading and approval of an ordinance amending chapter 31, officials and organizations, Section 0.01 firefighter qualifications of the Franklin County Code of Ordinances by amending the hiring and fitness requirements for firefighters.
So moved.
Second.
Squire Tracy is on the second. Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. The next item is authorization to approve a resolution in support of submission of an application for grant funds with the United States Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Emergency Management Agency's 2022 Assistance to Firefighters Grant.
So moved.
Second.
All right, call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. The next item, which would have been a second reading of our purchasing ordinance, has been removed. So the next item is the second reading and approval of an ordinance amending the table of special ordinances, section 1, zoning map changes of the Franklin County Code of Ordinances for a 53.5 acre property identified as PVA map number 060-00-00-024.01, located on Manley Leestown Road from Agricultural District, AG, to Industrial General District, IG.
So move.
Second.
Discussion, call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes, I would like to thank Harlan Wheatley and his team at Buffalo Trace for everything they do for our community, and I'm a yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. The next item is the first reading of an ordinance amending the Franklin County Code of Ordinances, section 155.010 definitions, 155.085 table of permitted uses, and create section 155.124 residential recovery facility to section 155 conditional uses, to add the land use of residential recovery facility as a conditional use in the agricultural AG, rural residential RR, rural residential A, RA, rural residential B, RB, rural residential C, RC, special residential RS, two dwelling RD, rural low density multifamily RL, rural high density multifamily RH, professional office PO, rural limited commercial CL, industrial commercial IC, and general industrial IG zoning districts. This is the first reading. There will be discussion at our next meeting on December 2nd about some of these changes that could take place. The second reading will be held on December the 17th at 9 a.m. The next item on the agenda is authorization to approve a resolution accepting Wellington Lane into the Franklin County road system. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Motion and seconded. Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
I guess due to the comments of the road supervisor about the condition of the road being brought up to code, and the assertion that it meets all the standards, I'll progress.
Squire Blackburn,
I want to mirror Squire Sebastian's comments. Have full faith in our road superintendent, and he's the one that the buck stops at. And if he says it's ready and he is willing to take it on and as fiscally responsible as he is, I agree. So I'm a yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Tracy, did you say yes?
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. Next item is authorization to award a construction contract in the amount of $62,926 to BEX Construction for improvements to the building at 231 East Main Street, bid package number 2.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Present.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. Next item is authorization to hire Daniel Walker as a part-time planner in planning and zoning at a salary of $20.50 per hour.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. Next item is authorization to approve a resolution relating to the acquisition of land identified as portion of property located at 350 Lewis Ferry Road from the H.G. Mays Corporation in the amount of $5,000.
So move.
Second.
This, just as a discussion, this property, we have been using for a number of years now, and we're getting it, acquiring from H.G. Mays. So we have the potential to build a new road department in this area. With that being said, call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm glad that we're finally getting the pieces in place to take care of our road department and get it updated. I'm a yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes, next item is authorization to approve a resolution relating to the acquisition of land identified as 0.95 acre property located on Lewis Ferry Road, further known as PVA map number 073-00-00-038.00 from Roy Liebman Estate in the amount of $6,000. And this is another piece of property that we've been using for over 50 years now. And we are going to purchase it from this estate.
So moved.
Second.
Who made the motion? I'm sorry.
Tracy,
Tracy.
Okay.
Or made second.
call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. The next item, authorization to approve declaring 501 Home Street as surplus property, has been removed from the agenda. The next item is authorization to approve a resolution adopting and approving the execution of a rural secondary program agreement between the Fiscal Court and the Commonwealth of Kentucky, Transportation Cabinet, Department of Rural Municipal Aid, and accepting all roads and streets referred to therein as being part of the county road system.
So move.
Second.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
I just want to say, if that bridge wasn't there, I don't know how you'd get there from here. That's pretty far out there and it needs to be.
Wellington Road.
Have to come from Wellington.
That's John Mitchell that. All right, call the roll.
okay, was that a yes? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. The next item is authorization to hire Brian Brewer as fire chief effective January 1st, 2022, at an annual salary of $84,864, replacing the great Chief Kevin Hutcherson, who is retiring, and we're going to miss you, Kevin, and thank you so much. We'll be talking with you. I'm sure we're going to do something and hopefully in the near future to honor you. But Kevin Hutcherson, thank you. God bless, and welcome Brian Brewer, hopefully. Let's see how that goes. Call the roll.
I need a motion.
Need a motion, okay?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
I just want to say I'm happy that we have qualified folks that are motivated internally, that are ready to step into the role. I'm glad we had several put in their applications, and I want to commend Assistant Chief Brewer for being proactive in his education and working hard to get all the certifications he does, and his bachelor's degree in fire science. And I'm a yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
I'd like to explain my vote. After a lengthy conversation with legal counsel, this particular candidate is a relative of mine by marriage, and I've been advised to vote present on this particular line item. With that being said, I vote present.
Squire Moore,
Just a clarification, this takes place January 1st, right?
That's what I said, didn't I? January 1st, 2022.
Yes.
You
Okay.
did.
Yes, yes. I'm a yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes, and Brian Brewer, thank you. God bless you and all the best as you move forward. And we're excited about your leadership. And Chief Hutcherson, God bless you and thank you so much for your leadership through the past 8 years as chief and all the other time you spent in with the fire department. We'll end this by saying we are better now than we were 8 years ago because of your leadership. And thank you, Chief Hutcherson. The next item is the second reading and approval of amendment number. No, let me go back and say, item number 18, authorization to advertise bids for fleet management has been removed. Now, the next item is second reading approval of amendment number 1 to ordinance number 6, 2021, relating to budget for the fiscal year 2021, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Squire Muller,
I'm glad the fiscal court's able to help the people of Farmville area. Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells,
Yes. The next item is authorization to receive the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells,
Yes. The next item is payment of claims. Is there any motion to deny any payment of the claims? Seeing none, let the record reflect claims are ordered to be paid. The next item is authorization to adjourn.
So moved.
Hey, Judge,
Yes, sir.
I got a couple questions if you don't, or maybe it's too late. I don't know. I just wanted to see if we could get an update on the compensation study. Or is it too late?
No, it's not too late, but
It's not a big deal. I can circle back. It's not a big deal.
okay, all right. Okay, do you have a second question?
No, sir.
You said a couple questions. Okay, all right. Okay, authorization to adjourn. Did we have a motion to adjourn? Squire Moore, I know you made the motion. Is there a second? Is there a second to adjourn?
So
I'll
moved.
make the second to adjourn. Let's adjourn. I don't know what the problem is here. Okay, all right, call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells,
Before I say yes, I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. I hope you have a great time with your family, all the families together. We are getting better in COVID. We're not over it yet. So everybody be careful. And most importantly, if you travel, may be very safe in your travels. God bless everybody. Have a happy Thanksgiving. And yes, we are adjourned. Thanks everybody for watching.
Thank you all. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.